All right, I'd like to call to order the Select Board meeting for February 11th, and our plan is to go into executive session and then return at 7 p.m. Do you have a motion to that effect?
Yes, I move that pursuant to Mass General Law 30A, paragraph 21, reason 3, that is, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, Massachusetts Coalition of Police Local 201 and 201A. I move that we enter executive session and return to open session beginning at 7 p.m.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, you have to do a roll call vote? Okay, roll call vote.
Arnold, aye.
Who's next? Reed, aye. I guess.
Snell, aye.
Triola, aye.
And Mr. Modell is not present at the moment. Oh,
There
he's
he comes.
arrived. Aye, he voted aye. All right.
Great.
Do you have to do roll call for executive session always?
Yes. All right, we're going into. Are microphones on? Okay, good. All right, so the Select Board is reconvening from having just been in executive session. We typically begin with community input, and then we're holding the joint meeting with the school committee, and we have other items, including Cemetery Task Force, Cultural Council, and Concord 250th discussion on our agenda tonight. The school committee is here, so we'd like to do that, but I do have an open session for public comment. The way we do public comment is I would ask that you ask me for recognition, state your name and address in Carlisle or wherever, and I'll give you between 1 to 2 minutes at my discretion. Are there any public comments at this point in time? We also have public comment at the end of our meeting as well. All right, seeing none. Oh. 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 All right, well, that's a comment, so that's good.
We like those kind of
All
community
right.
comments.
Is there anyone else online who would like to make a public comment? Okay. Seeing none, I would ask, is the school committee, have you opened your session yet?
We have.
You have not. Well, if you'd like to, welcome. We thank you for coming to our meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Sharon Witt, School Committee Chair, I call our meeting to order at, what's the time here?
7:09.
7:09. Thank you. And just for the record, all present members are present.
Great. So we were going to begin this joint meeting to discuss the vacant school committee position appointment. And we had 2 candidates who were interested in this appointment, and one has withdrawn her application effectively today. So we only have 1 candidate who is applying for this position. And Sharon Witt and I have spoken and decided we would go through a process, and we will kind of continue that process, which is just that we are going to ask the candidate to answer 3 questions which were provided to the candidates prior to this this meeting, and if there are any additional questions, because this is a joint meeting, you can feel free to chime in or ask us as chairs if you have a particular question you'd like to ask of the candidate. So I see the candidate is here, James Steele. James, if you wouldn't mind coming forward, just because we need a microphone, maybe you can sit with the school committee there or somewhere, because then they can hear you on the microphone. Sharon, do you happen to have the questions handy?
I do.
Oh, you do? Oh, well, perfect.
He's prepared.
Perfect. Well, James does. I have them, but I just don't have them on my. Oh, you have it right there?
Yes.
All right.
May I? Sure.
Okay. Sharon, do you mind if I go and read them?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. So we'll start. So again, thank you for your willingness to volunteer. We'd like to use this opportunity to learn more about you as a candidate. Specifically, the 3 questions we would like you to address. First, and we'll just take them in order and you can answer them after. Why do you feel now is the right time for you to serve on the school committee? What do you hope to achieve or be involved in during your tenure? That's the first question.
So
I've thought about this in the past, about participating at this level, a broader level, and now seems the right time. I have two children in the elementary school in 3rd and 4th grade. They've sort of reached an age where they're a little more self-reliant. I work part-time. We've structured it that way in our family such that I'm able to manage kids and a bit of work and a house. So it's sort of the right time. My kids are still in, and it will be Carlisle for another 5 years, 6 years. It's the right time. And the second part of that question, so I don't come here with an agenda of joining the board. I don't have any pet projects or an agenda other than I'd like to have more community involvement, more service to my community, and help shepherd it through carefully and thoughtfully. The school committee, I'm pretty passionate about our school. I love the education my kids are getting and being part of it, and I'd like to help shepherd it along for a little while and offer what I can.
Great. Are there any other related questions to that, or should we move on to the next and follow? Okay, question number 2. If you were speaking to a family interested in moving to Carlisle with young children, how would you describe the school system to them?
I thought about that one a lot, and I always come back to when we first moved here, before we got pregnant, right before we moved here, and I did a farm share at Clark Farm my first summer here. We didn't know anybody, and it's not super easy to meet people when you, we found out. And from picking green beans and strawberries, I remember no less than 3 people starting an introduction saying, "Do you have kids in school?" And we said, "No, not yet." And so, well, that's going to change. When you have kids in school, it will change. You'll meet people. They sort of understood my plight, that we were kind of alone. So they were right. Turns out they were right. I really appreciate our school system. I think it is, I don't have a lot to compare it to. This is the first time I've been through this. But I have met such a caring, thoughtful bunch of teachers and staff and administrators. I've had an opportunity to be involved in some of the committees. And I've really been pleasantly surprised getting to peek behind the curtain a little bit to see how they really operate. And personally, my son has had a little bit of trouble with reading and a couple of things, and to have educators step forward and identify that and help shepherd us through that process, compared to what I hear from parents in other school districts that have to fight and claw to sort of get help, it just speaks a lot to, I think, the commitment that this town has to the school. COVID, that was my daughter started kindergarten in the fall of 20, and the way that we handled that seems unprecedented for what happened around town, and that's something to be proud of. And so I think it's a pretty easy sell to sell our school to people who, I moved here because we were going to have a family. That's why we're here. We knew about the school, and so that's why we're here. It's a pretty easy sell, I think. That's kind of how I'd frame it.
Great. Any follow-up on that? Okay. So the last question. Massachusetts schools are facing a variety of fiscal challenges as they seek to manage rising costs while maintaining sustainable budget increases. How would you work with the school committee, administration, and town to develop a school budget that meets both the needs of the school community and Carlisle taxpayers as a whole?
A very expensive question. So I've not worked with any of those groups before, but I'm 20 plus years as a business lawyer. My business lawyer, I've been in-house counsel, so I am largely a business person who wears a lawyer's hat through my negotiations. I'm a trained mediator, and I've mediated through the Woburn Court for years. So I like negotiating. So that part of the question, I enjoy that. That's what I've been trained to do, to parse out, to listen, to move forward, to problem solve. So that's what I've been trained to do, and that's what I do every day in my job. As for the fact that it's around finances, I really believe that financial literacy and thoughtful budgeting belongs in the home and through all levels of government. And I think the best answers come when everybody's involved, and what I've seen from successful negotiations and deals that last the longest is when everybody's there and everybody listens and everybody gets an opportunity to speak. I think that it sounds really, really difficult. This is I think it's always been difficult. I don't think it's going to go away no matter where you live or how much money your community has. But being careful with that and thoughtful and listen and problem solve through that is what I like to do, which is what I'm excited about for this opportunity to continue to do that, but for my community. So I think I would approach it with my negotiation skills and my business skills and my lawyer skills, and listen a lot and understand that it's going to be painful. I think it's probably the way it's supposed to be a little bit. That's how you keep it honest and move forward through it. So I think that's my approach to how I do most things, and I would like to work through budget issues the same way.
Barney?
Yeah, hi, I'm Barney Arnold.
Nice to meet you.
Do you go by James or Jim?
I do.
You go by
please.
James.
Yes.
So this is sort of a,
Won't be any confusion then. That'll be good.
oh, between him and Mr. O. So as I'm sure you're aware, you know, the school budget, the Carlisle, the elementary school budget is a huge portion of our operating budget. I mean, by far, that and the high school are I forgot what percentage it is, but it's way over and above, you know, anything else. And, you know, so right now, we have the Finance Committee has asked all the departments to look at how they could, as sort of an exercise, how could you reduce your department budget by, what was the percent? 2%?
2%.
2%.
About 2 to 2% increase.
And so, you know, for a two-person department, that could be have a huge impact. And certainly it could have an impact on the school department too. I'm curious, there's not a right or wrong, and, you know, but I'm curious, just at first glance, do you think that because the school has such a big impact on the operating budget, that there is more, they have more of a responsibility to control costs? And, you know, because from our perspective as the select board, you know, we kind of set out a goal for what percent tax impact. We're trying to, you know, hold the line at a certain level of increase. But obviously from the school side, you're trying to make sure you still have, you know, you have the best possible educational program. And those, as you say, they can be in conflict. So I'm just interested in your you know, personal view about whether the school budget, since it has so much of an impact, that there's more of a you know, responsibility or more of a need for the school committee with the administration to be trying to hold the line or keep those increases to what our guidance request is every year.
So you're asking because of the sheer size of the school, if it has more of a responsibility to pay attention to its budget. Is that sort of, okay.
Yeah, the size of
Yeah.
how much the town spends on the school, which is, you know, I don't know what it would be, but, you know, it's vastly more than any other part of town services.
I'd like to think more about that, but I will say, off the cuff, a little bit, I think maybe it does. Everyone has their stories, right? I grew up in the 70s in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Our soccer jerseys had the local bars on the back. That's how we paid for them, right? It was, educational programs came and went. I didn't go to a normal fourth or fifth grade because there was some new modality for education that was costly that has burned out and long since gone. Now, so I think we all need to be mindful. I'm not an educator, I'm not an expert in that, but I certainly understand that the community also, while it's a caring community, we want to see bang for the buck. So that's a really tough thing I like to get into it, and I am not into it, so I'm reluctant to really draw a line in the sand, frankly, without
Yeah.
knowing. But I think being careful financially is really important. It always is, and I think you're always going to make people angry. And I don't know that we've necessarily fully proven that money means a better education. I don't know. Certainly there are basics, right? There are all those theories around that need to be covered. So, yeah, with a big budget, you have to pay attention. The creep can happen I think percentage-wise, the ratio of creep with a larger budget, I think it's easier to identify, easier to see ultimately when there's a lot of moving parts versus smaller moving parts. So I think it's a tough job for the school and those who help facilitate it. I think it's tough, but on its face, I think perhaps there's a strong responsibility to pay attention to that.
Thanks.
Okay.
Anything else?
You've scared me a little with that. I don't.
I think
Barney's not scary, I can promise you that.
she worked in the schools.
I was a teacher in
Okay.
school for quite a long time, so.
Kindergarten, no less, so, yeah.
I think that's a good point. I mean,
Yeah.
We're certainly conscious of that for the whole town, and
Yeah.
the school is a big part of that, so we just,
And-
that's
And
why.
a number of the elected members of the board have already had a conversation with me in the past where I always try to remind them they're elected by the entire town, not only by the parents, and that they do have a fiduciary responsibility to the town, and that we like to encourage the school committee to keep that firmly in mind when you are looking at the budget. And if you're asked to do a cutting exercise, to do a good faith effort, to let us know where you could possibly squeeze some money out, because otherwise it is taken out of the hides of other departments that can maybe afford it less. Small, yeah. So.
Okay. School committee have anything you want to add? Questions? Otherwise, I would ask that maybe, James, if there are no more questions, you can go back to.
Thank you.
Thanks
so
Get
much.
off the hot seat.
Get off the hot seat. And Sharon, I have to hand it to Sharon. She was great in helping to put this all together for a joint session, so thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Travis.
And also, thank you again to Nancy Pierman-Weiss, who had also volunteered, but has graciously decided to step aside on her own accord. So with that, Sharon and I discussed a process here, and we basically said we would have a discussion among the two boards and committees here, and then we would vote. The school committee will start individually, and you'll vote individually on the candidate, and then we'll vote individually. There's only one candidate, so we're going to be fine. But is there any comment or anything anyone wants to add?
I was just going to add one thing, because I've had the privilege of knowing James pretty much since we moved here. Our kids know each other really well. I know James really well. And I just think, Kate, the same advice you just gave James, you gave me, and I take that with me, not only here, but also to the region. And James may not say this, but I've had pretty much a front seat view into some of the work that he's done at the school and personally, and I think we all have been it. We're all public servants, and you go, no matter where you go, like I see your wife at the hospital, and Barney's helping me with the Highland, and you see the same people, and that's been James since I've known him. He's on the school start time. He's helped with interviewing teachers. There's something going on, and he's volunteering. And a lot of these things do have a fiscal lens, so I think it just comes naturally to him. And so I just wanted to say that before we had a vote, that I have full confidence in his ability.
You want to hold your vote, Sharon? You can do that however you want to.
Do you need a motion, or how do you want to do this?
Well, here, can we do voice vote?
She's her committee. She can do it.
Right.
Oh, yeah, no,
So
I
we're all
just
here, do you want
was
to
asking that.
individual vote? Okay, let's call for the
Is that the
vote.
motion?
I was gonna say, do you want me to?
Brian's
make
always good at it,
the
that's why I look
motion?
at him.
Okay, so make a motion to approve, accept,
Approve?
Appoint?
appoint, thank you, that's the A word I was looking for.
All right, we're back to you.
To appoint James Steele as a member of the school committee.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
Did you want all in favor? or-
All in favor?
Aye.
Rowan?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Well-
opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, so now we'll go to the select board. Do I have a motion?
I move to appoint James Steele as a member of the Carlisle School Committee term to end at the next annual town election, spring 2025, to complete the term vacated by Sarah Wilson.
Second.
Okay. I know we're gonna have a discussion right after this about Sarah, or you were gonna say something. but
So
anything else?
2025?
Yes, it's just a few months.
Oh, jeez.
A lot of work to
I know.
just.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll just do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Welcome
So,
aboard.
congratulations, James.
Congratulations.
But I know that Sarah Wilson had served very faithfully and served very well for a long time. And I think David had wanted to say something, and maybe Jim O'Shea as well.
Can I call time out for a second?
Yeah.
You can.
So I thought Sarah was gonna be here.
So did I.
We just
Yeah.
texted and called, and she had it on her calendar to be at the school committee meeting tomorrow night.
Ah.
So you guys, everybody's welcome if you want. I apologize.
Okay.
It's recorded too.
Everybody's there, everybody's there.
We should do it when she's there.
I think it probably makes more sense.
Yeah, I was wondering that myself. That's why I asked Mary about that. Mary, I asked you about that.
So yeah,
Yeah.
we got all the things there, but
I know.
Sarah's not here, so.
Yeah, we should do it when she's there, so I.
Okay.
Tomorrow at 6. The school
6 will
committee
be
meeting at 6 tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll be there, David, if you want.
Huh?
I'll be there if you want.
Okay.
We won't have a quorum, but you can attend individually.
I'm not gonna be there.
Yeah.
All right, but.
Is that okay? We had some people I invited. Is that okay with you guys, Christine?
Love it.
And Eva?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, well,
Okay.
we'll do a preview though and say thank you to her.
Yeah.
All right, so moving right along, and we did talk a little bit about fiscal sustainability, and so let's move on to the Highland Building. That was one of our goals as a select board. It really stems from the fact that over the last 3 years, we've tried to work on getting a better capital budget for the town, because these projects typically have come up just in town meetings, and we don't really have a way to gauge what types of projects. And so now we're trying to get on a capital plan. As you probably know, we've started with the police station, we're looking at the fire station, we're potentially going to look at DPW, but there are other town assets that are out there, including the Bog House and the Highland Building. So as a goal for our year, we wanted to focus on the Highland Building and also the Bog House to try and figure out they're sort of unproductive assets of the town right now, and what can we do? How can we move them forward or do something with them, whatever that may be? We tasked that, obviously, you're in control of that building, though I think, do we own it, the ground? I've forgotten how.
No, they own the
They own the
ground,
ground?
we own the building.
We own the building, okay. So I'd love to hear where you are in that process.
Yeah, Brian, do you mind sharing the slides? I think that's what Travis mentioned, you might be able to do that. If not, I can join the Zoom. Sorry to put you on the spot. So I think while they're we're getting the slides going, maybe just a quick recap. So we came, I think in the summertime, to the select board. As a group, we designated myself and Scott Jameson to be the Highland Working Group. And just from a historic standpoint, we knew we really wanted to have somebody that's already done a lot of the work, because there's been no shortage of that in the community, and we don't want to waste time or reinvent the wheel. So I asked Chrissy O'Shea to come and work with us from CPC, and then I just said to her, from your experience, who else should we be bringing in? And she quickly brought up Jack Drost, John Valentine, Brendan Harney. So we have a really nice working group. We've had a chance to meet a few times. We gave Ryan an update in December, and this is kind of where we are now. So we only have 2 slides to show, and then we wanted to make sure there was time for some questions. But if you go to the next page, please. The way that it is divided up into really 4 different areas. So we looked at this from a tasks and initiatives standpoint. So the first thing is the group that we gathered together, and the information that we started to collect was, do we want to have the building, it's been secured, the envelope has been secured, do we even want to use the building, or should be turned into a different space, because we had heard that been brought up. And I think for our group, our feeling is that the building stands. It's beautiful. We don't have a ton of things like this. And the work was done on the outside. If we'd like to exhaust really understanding what it's going to take. I think the other piece, though, is kind of what you started to mention. We know how big the school budget is, and we don't want this to just be for us. So we really want to look at this as part of the strategic plan for the town, as much multi-generational use as possible, but still have it be education-based. And so that's just kind of I'll just say at the macro level what we have going on. So again, the first thing to do is information gathering, doing almost an audit of what we have in place. And so especially I see John's online, we're really thankful for him, and I think Jack's on too. Between the two of them, we've collected, hundreds, thousands of pages of information. And we're starting to go through a lot of that information and really seeing what is just good knowledge and then what is actionable in terms of, for example, some plans were just done recently to look at the apartment. Can we just make some small tweaks? What should we be doing? The next part is going into grants, funding, and then revenue. And that's a word I'm going to come back to in a second. But starting with the grants and funding is we need to do some studies. Some of them we can use existing and just make small tweaks for a pretty low amount. Other things need a little bit more information. So we have put forth some CPA grant applications. Scott's been working closely with Barney and the rest of the CPC. We also are leaning on Chrissy and the rest of the folks that have the more historical lens on what is the value from a grant standpoint if we do state historic status versus federal. So she's looking into that and really modeling out what those opportunities are from a grant and trying to lower the taxpayer burden as much as possible. And then the last piece is revenue. And so, Brian and I ran it the same year. I think the most common question, at least that I got, was, how are we going to fix this vocational path? There's a lot of kids in town that really would like to do it, but we know the numbers will never justify re-entering into a Minuteman or Shawshene Tech. So how do we find that opportunity? And so we've done a bit of research. I wouldn't say it's exhausted on what could a path look like where we could have some kind of a vocational offering, and could it be a revenue generator? We're never going to have enough kids in Carlisle to make the building a vocational school. But could we build something out that kids from Concord are tuitioning here, kids from Billerica, Chelmsford, wherever those things might be at the high school level? We've just started to play with that idea. And so some of the things that we're starting to do is, are there any mini vocational certificates? So Scott and I have talked about, what if there's project management? Every high school student, that would be great. James, as you've been talking about financial literacy, could those be classes that we offer starting in the middle school that we could use K through 8? But we've started to research, for example, Shrewsbury, Waltham High, they all have these mini vocational offerings. They're called vocational paths. And there might even be certificate offerings. And that's the true school lens. But the other path that we've talked about is, if you think about vocation, there's a million of them. If you take, I think everyone would be so surprised between their own high school experience and what's available now at a vocational school. It's night and day. And there's just so much that's out there. But if you think about from a community standpoint in Carlisle, if there was I'll say a food service or a cooking offering there, just imagine if we could work with the COA on doing Meals on Wheels out of that kitchen, and we work with the farm, and we have something that's almost like a mini circular economy that we could have in town. I think we're trying to think really, really big. That was some of the advice that Dave gave over the summer. Let's start really big, and then we can chip away from that instead of limiting ourselves out of the gates. I think the other piece is, again, just going back to that multi-generational use. So Scott and I have talked about, we'd love to just kind of work with John and Jack and some Suzanne Spinney and some other folks that have started to join us, and hearing the feedback that has been collected in the town, eventually get out and talk to more people so we can understand what is blue sky for each part of the community. And we might not be able to get to utopia, but are there some things that if each group in town was like, this is something that we would really love to see come to fruition, that's great. As a parent, I am a little bit more selfish around that 8 to 2 period from, I'll say, a safety standpoint of people that are just going to be on the school grounds. So we'll work with some of that. But then if you go to the next slide, and then I want to make sure Scott has a chance to add anything I may miss or any questions. But what we started to do is really look at this as a timeline for what we can do between now and town meeting, where our CPA funds will come out. But also we would like to do a second review with the school committee, because we're going to do one tomorrow night. We're going to do a second one, and then maybe even come back here. But we wanted to map out really what we're starting to do. So one of them is we're going to broaden our working group to be an official subcommittee tomorrow. We're going to go out and visit some of these technical programs. So we're already working to try to get to Waltham High in early March. And then we would like to get some of these like smaller listening sessions going, so that when we come back to you with a final recommendation in the, I'll say, late April, May timeframe, that we feel like we really have a community view on this. And I think just the last piece that I'll add is there's been, the building is beautiful. Like if I just take away any hat I have on, just the building is beautiful. It's such a great piece of history. And what the town did to just kind of secure it, we looked at that as phase 1. And so right now we will look at this project as the start of a phase 2. And really, again, exhausting all the use cases, because if we don't do this now, you're going to lose it, or we're going to lose it. And so I think time is of the essence. We want to make sure that we're being diligent, we've broadened our scope, and that hopefully we can move on to either the second half of phase 2 or a phase 3 where we're actually saying, okay, here is like the plans and this is what we're going to move forward with. So with that, I will stop. Anything I missed?
No, that was really comprehensive, and I think just to stress the entire community, we want a building that is used all the time, right? So during the day for middle and high school students, on the weekends with adult education and public use, for recreation can have additional services in there. So the idea is we want to get the building not only used for all ages and all sort of groups within the town, but just have it used all the time. So it's not just, hey, once a week we have a thing in there. That's not enough, right?
Right.
And so really that's what we're looking at. And, driving toward that cost neutral, right? If we could provide recreational offerings that, are cash flow positive for the building effectively, and adult education, and to Julie's point, other towns that could come in and provide things. And if you look at industrial work in the world, for every 5 electricians that retire, there's 1 coming in, so could we foster some of that, have that come back to the community? People who go into those lines of work stay in the community, right? It doesn't mean we don't want people to go to college, great, but they move away typically. We want folks so if we could complement the type of education we already provide with the types of folks that can serve the community and stay here and add another type of value, then that's even better, right? So that's really that comprehensive look at what we want to do.
Yeah,
so.
Well said.
Okay. Are there any other questions? We do have a couple of other agenda items with the joint meeting here while they're here, but that's helpful to have the update, and that's what we're looking for. Appreciate it, and think you're doing good work. That's what we were hoping, is that I was hoping in particular, that you move this forward, and we as a town, start to make some decisions as to what is going to happen with the building. Okay, our next item that we were talking about jointly was the use of the land, or actually it's the school, for the Great Brook Farm Touring Center. And this came to us, and I think it has come to you, and maybe
I make a comment? You want some public comment on this?
Not at this time. Not at this time, John. We have a couple of other items, but we will take public comment at the end of our meeting here, and potentially.
Okay, not on the Highland. Okay, fine, fair enough.
Yep. Yep. We had talked to Stuart Johnstone, who I believe came and approached you as well for the ski touring center, and this was just because we have an opportunity to talk jointly about this, and maybe we had a different thought on it, but when we heard from Stuart, he had asked if he could use the school parking lot, and we obviously, it's not under our purview to do that, but we were certainly supportive of his business in Great Brook, and it attracts literally 1,000 people on snowy days, and he said on occasion, on a weekend, he may want to use the school parking lot. And as a board, I think we were very sympathetic to that and just kind of wanted to understand from the school committee if that would be something that you would consider, because he approached us and said that they really weren't receptive to that. He wasn't negative on it, he just said that maybe I don't have the right information. So I thought maybe you could just talk about that.
And just to clarify, we gave approval for parking on both Church Street and Town Hall at our meeting.
Correct.
For this purpose?
Yes.
Okay.
And I did speak with Jim briefly about it, just to get and I understand there were concerns on your end appropriately about liability, snow removal, and some of those practical matters, that when we had our meeting, those questions were raised, but we were satisfied that those weren't concerns.
We thought that if you had a conflict, yes, the school would take precedence, but if you're not using the parking lot, is there a problem in letting us to use it? No.
I think our issue was, it was a for-profit company asking to use the school property, and our concerns were liability, also scheduling with activities that are occurring in the school. We didn't want any conflict with that. I think those were our two major concerns. Were there anything else that I'm missing?
I think, and then, snow removal, I would say, is a minor concern compared to those. But, when we received the request, and there was never dialogue with him at a school committee meeting. It was just an email that was submitted, and we discussed it in our correspondence. Our feeling was, this is not, excuse me, this is not the library needing parking. This is not FRS or the Congregational Church. This is a business on essentially the other side of town, and we were just concerned you're going to have a shuttle in there. What if there's rehearsal for, say, the 7th grade play, or kids running to go to the playground at the weekend? It just didn't feel, it felt like there was risk, and it just didn't feel like the right fit.
Remind me, did he offer to
Fits.
pay for this? Is he gonna pay?
No, I don't believe so.
Because I don't
No, I don't
expect
think
him to
there
pay
was
for use
pay.
on street parking, but for the parking lot, would he pay us for it?
I don't remember
not brought
any
up.
type of
No, I think
compensation
Matt-
offered.
He was gonna
talking
run the
about
shuttle.
paying for the shuttles,
Yeah.
and not
Right.
for the
Well, I mean,
youth.
that's a
for the
business
parking.
Not
expense.
something to.
I
Somebody
should,
sympathy for
I
that,
should
but-
point out, if I could, that I wouldn't call him a profit-making business. I'd call him trying to reduce his lost business.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great, for those of you who cross-country ski, there's so few places in the Commonwealth anymore, or anywhere really, that you can do that.
Yeah.
And it's been a terrible stretch of time for him and his practice. And the confluence of actually a decent snow year, and that we paved a lot and we took away a bunch of spaces that he had before.
The state pays.
The state. But, so, yes, he's an independent business, but I would like to correct a misimpression that, he's making a bunch of money. He's not making any money. He's trying to at least allow people who want to ski the place to park, which he has none, and where can we go? And so, at least for me personally, I'm not speaking on behalf of the select board, but we have resources in town, and I feel like we should try to help him. And we should try to meet him halfway. I mean, your concerns are legitimate. I think we can talk about them, but I don't want people to come away with this like we're giving up something because some guy's trying to make a bunch of money in the town.
No, and I don't think that was our impression. It was just, he is a for-profit company. We were just simply stating that.
He's a commercial.
Right.
Well, and one
The
of
other thing I
was just going to say, the other problem is that whether there is an issue on certain days where they will park on Curve Street, people will park, and there's a problem we have to deal with regardless if he doesn't have enough parking. I've seen it before and today I actually got out there for a little bit, and they had plenty of parking spots today, but I was surprised how full the lot was.
When I drive by at night, I think they have nights now.
They have night ski. But, so our part of our calculus was, if we don't give him an option, people are just gonna park in places we really don't want them, namely Curve Street or along Great Brook. And that was part of our thinking in terms of allowing him a place to do this, if he even decides he wanted to do it.
So
Yeah.
hypothetically, if the school were to allow that, one of the concerns that I would have is, even if it's a weekend where in theory the school's not using that parking lot, it is actually heavily used from time to time. So there are ebbs and flows in uses for like the auditorium and other things. So how would we mitigate, hey, wait a minute, we let him use it, now the school can't park there because the parents came to park and see their kids rehearse or whatever, and we've just displaced our core constituency. That would be my biggest concern. And we don't have someone there directing traffic and saying, okay, sorry, we're full now, that would be a concern that I would have, so.
That's why we're talking about this.
Exactly,
Yeah.
so.
We just
I-
discussed with
Even
him-
though it's a low probability,
Yeah.
I think it's a non-zero probability.
Well, we just had discussed with him if it would, A, it would only be on weekends, and B, it would, the dates where it was allowable would be clearly identified, so you wouldn't have if you knew you were having seventh
We
grade
might have to
play.
identify those conflicts in advance for sure.
Oh, yeah, well, you would
Yeah.
have to. You would
Yeah.
have to. If you
And-
couldn't do that, that would be a problem. I mean,
I
And
think
he would control whether or not there's a shuttle service, right? So
Yeah.
if he knew, the following
You
half
can't
day.
predict when there's gonna be snow. But we
No,
would-
but
the
I'm
other tricky
saying
part.
if he knew
Yeah.
ahead of time that, and there was snow, but he knew ahead of time that particular Saturday, the school parking lot was gonna be used,
then tell him no.
and he just, right, he says
Say
to
no.
folks, you can park in my usual parking space.
I think
places.
just to build on what everyone else is saying, I may have a little bit of a different in opinion on this. Like I actually would be open to him doing it, but I would not give it to him for free. I think there should be some kind of a rental fee. I'm an independent business owner. I understand the trials and tribulations of that, but I don't want to set a precedent because somebody could have something else across town at the bog, like, hey, we're going to do this, or I look at even some of the things that have happened at Clark Farm Market, which is, I love, walk there all the time. If they want to have a big party, are we going to set the precedent that the school is always going to be this place? I think there should be some kind of a fee. I'm not looking to price gouge anyone, but I do think that there should be a fee. I think Scott's point on like giving a schedule in advance. But I do think, like I also balance what Sharon always reminds me of, is the Carlisle way. I do want to find a way to have people be able to get out there, and I think Scott's bringing up a good point on safety. But I do think there should be some expectation on, a rental fee of using the space. I just think that that's the right.
Okay.
Yeah, I have just one quick comment, if it's all right. And maybe everybody knows the history, but I just want to remind folks that this family goes back a couple of generations, and they started the Bill Koch League here in town, before we got here, so at least 45, 50 years ago. And they've given a tremendous amount to Carlisle kids, Carlisle families. And so it's good to remember that. It's not,
No,
and
I know
yes,
that,
he's
I
trying
know.
to run a business, but he's also his family have made a huge contribution to the town.
Yeah.
We do
It's
need to
not our
kind of wrap this
decision
up. I know,
anyway.
it is not our decision. I think we just wanted to use this as an opportunity to understand the rationale, and also to, if he's probably, and he is exploring other alternatives as well. But if he was to come back, I guess as a board, or we would ask that you consider some of these things, and if you have objections, it's ultimately your decision, but we just thought we would raise those thoughts.
Just does the state have any further plans to pave more? I mean, this winter's done, like, at this
Right.
point, realistically. I
Right.
mean, what's the state's plan to?
We didn't know this was coming. They
We didn't know it was being
notify
paved.
anybody in
Okay. They
just
town that they were
paved it.
planning to pave.
Right, so to your point, I think, it wasn't a situation of his making, right? The reason
I
for
get
the
it.
ask had nothing to do with him expanding
Listen, I
his
get
business
it.
or
I'm
anything.
not trying to be the evil one here. I'm just saying, I keep on hearing about this. Like I've heard all the wonderful stories about this family. I do understand that. I think what I'm just trying to understand from a process standpoint is, as more businesses and as new people come in, it's really hard for somebody like myself who's been here, who has family members that have been here for a long time, but if you don't know every detail, this keeps happening where somebody's like, well, you don't, and it's tricky, because there's gonna be somebody else that's gonna come in and says, well, I have a long history here too. All I'm saying is I just wanna set up some kind of a process, a nominal fee,
Yeah.
just to have something where we can point to it.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
That's
All this is reasonable, it's your decision, we just wanted to bring this up
Yeah.
as a.
Right, and just a reminder, we didn't take it lightly, we really did consider all the options.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
I think we could take it back and just,
Or even just invite
If-
him to
if-
come talk
if
to you.
he-
if you-
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll mention to him that we've had this conversation. If he wants to further that, he can approach you about that. The last thing we wanted to do, just briefly, is talk about the town administrator bylaw. You all had received a copy of that. That's something that the select board's been working on. It actually follows in with the capital discussion we were having about putting everything on a capital plan. We're trying our best to make Carlisle continue to make it more financially and fiscally sustainable. And one of the ways that we think we can promote that is through this town administrator bylaw. And you say, well, how is that? Well, the task force that came out, we had in 2021, we had the town governance task force, and one of their top recommendation was to have a town administrator bylaw. And this would effectively give more operational control to the town administrator rather than, right now we have policies where so we're all volunteers, and our boards, many of them have staff members, and the staff members report directly to the board, and that's true for HR issues and everything else. And we're evening volunteers. We're not at least I don't think most of us are in the business of, day-to-day managing when people come, go, adhere to employee policies. And so we think, based on the task force recommendations, based on our own research, based on the master plan, which also supported this idea, that this type of bylaw would make a lot of sense for Carlisle. And although, if you've read it, it excludes the school committee, so you are independent, also excludes the fire department, but it would put the other towns and boards under this, kind of set of policies that would be directed at the select board's direction to the town administrator. Policy decisions would still be retained at the committee levels. But this is about getting committees to set policy rather than to manage employees. So I just wanted to put that out there if there are any questions or comments on it. But this, again, is our outreach to boards.
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just like two things, and this is probably more on a, less of a school question than, just as a citizen looking at it, is I was curious, fire versus police, why, I guess really when I look at 3.3.2, it doesn't feel black and white as far as what's included and what's excluded, and I wonder as well, like over time, if, like, are there gonna be decisions about, does this new, whoever, like, new group, whatever that might be, new department, where it falls in, and so, that's my biggest thing, is just where does this go with time as we continue to add departments? My second piece of this is I was surprised that the library would be included in this bylaw, because in my mind, the library is very similar to the school in the way that it needs to operate, and it feels like it's a bit of a different function. So those were just sort of my thoughts going through it, but again, I'm not speaking so much in a school committee capacity there as a resident.
Again, I think we're trying to get everyone in the town under the same umbrella. The school committee is a separate, the school is its own entity, and we're not trying to do that. Though I will give credit to Jim O'Shea and to our town administrator, who are working together to, share facilities, and we're trying to do this because this is going to help us fiscally for our town going forward. And we think that the same is true for these various departments, because this will allow having more professional management in place so that we can, do things like job share or other things that have the potential to help in the efficient running of our town. So if we start excluding all these different boards, then we're going to be right where we are now. And so we've included them all, and we'd ask that you support that. If there's nothing else, I think we need to move on, and maybe we'd ask you to
Adjourn.
thank you for being here.
Take a motion to adjourn the Carlisle School Committee meeting.
Second?
Second? Okay.
I also plan on attending your meeting tomorrow if you want to have
Yeah.
follow-up questions in your session.
Sounds good, thanks, Scott.
Are you at Community Center tomorrow? The community room?
Yes.
I didn't even look.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you
Thank
coming here.
Thank you.
Come to your wife and invite everyone.
Drive by your house, who knows which you is.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for setting this up.
Thanks so much, appreciate you.
Thank you, James.
Congratulations, James.
Yes.
All right, moving right along. We're a little late, but we'll survive. Cemetery Task Force. We're looking for the cemetery. Hey, Gordon, there he is.
Dana.
And
Dana.
And please,
Dana,
and
yeah, come
Susan.
on, and
Yeah.
Susan, all of you, yeah.
Come up here.
Jim, you're the one actually.
I'm
for
moral
grades.
support and Exhibit A.
I've been wanting to look at that, actually.
Where's
I hope
B,
there's a
C, and
copy.
D? Oh, this is the Bible right here.
This is going to the Historical Society once we get everything
Okay.
online at the
As a
cemetery.
task force, you're a public entity, right? So you
Yes.
need to have a vote to open a meeting? You're having a meeting at this
Yes,
point?
we are.
Okay.
So I vote to open the meeting as chair at 7:58.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, great.
Are you going to do the slides?
Yep.
Great. Oh, yeah. So let me know when they're up and I'll go through it. Do you want to do that I think the way it was set up before is I'll just run through the slides and you ask questions, or do you want to do it interactive as we go?
You could run through it, it's pretty long.
Yeah, but
I'm going to shorten it. I'll do-
please keep in mind that we do have, well, I guess until 8:15 or so, so we
So
really don't have a
I'll
great
go
20.
through it quickly.
Okay.
Because you've all read the report that
Yep.
I've given you, I'm
Yep.
sure, and it just reflects a lot of that.
Great.
Yeah.
So for those watching at home, you'll get all the highlights in this. So the very first slide here is our green cemetery with the beautiful Wilson Chapel and the green monument itself. So can you go to the next slide, please, Ryan? So we're going to run right into this. And excuse me if I just rattle on. You can stop. I have a habit of
You're doing
doing that. Our understanding is that our ask, or your ask to us, is to fulfill these points, which are primarily safeguarding what we have in terms of our historical information, data, and burial records in the cemetery. And along with that, when I say workflows and continuity of operations, it sounds really fancy, but really, how do we get all this done? How do we physically and with data do the work, secure the work, and ensure that it's kept for posterity? The state of space utilization and potential expansion is always a big question, and utilization is something kind of interesting that we picked into, and I'll talk a little bit about that more. And capital investment where we know it, and how it can be applied to some of these things. Can we go on to the next one? So I popped this one up here because I've done a lot of project work, and sometimes I think, you get lost in the inputs and outputs. And I just want to stop for a second and remark on what we have, what we're talking about here. This is our cemetery, this is our cemeteries. This is part of our, the fabric of our town, and we take great pride in it. And you'll note that there are a lot of children in these pictures. We instill in them the civic pride that we hold in the cemeteries and in our history. Can you go to the next slide, please? So moving right to the key findings. Central burial ground is the obvious one that people think of when they drive into Carlisle, and it's wonderful. It's, as I say, it's a treasure, and it is fortunate to have the Historical Commission looking into ways to preserve it, and we give them a lot of credit for bringing to the town's consciousness the need to do that, and the preservation work that's underway now is fantastic. That brings us to Green Cemetery, which is in operational mode, day in and day out. And there's probably not a day that Jim Hall is not in there, many times a day in the fall, blowing leaves with his crew, but every day doing something to maintain Green Cemetery, the proverbial duck paddling on the pond like crazy underneath. When I say in the next bullet, the end-to-end workflow, it's heavily manual, so that workflow thing, I always use that word and I probably shouldn't. The process, which I put in the Fuller report, that is used to enter a burial from beginning, when you entertain the notion of a burial, to getting it into the town offices, is almost all manual. The books that Jim relies on are physical, a series of them. This is the Bible here, but they are what records our burials. A stack was given to him from the prior supervisor and said, go to it. And when Jim records a burial, he goes into the books and he goes to the town offices, works with the executive assistant to town administrator or the town clerk, and they fill it out and it goes into the system. When I say a flat file, it's flat like paper because there are file cabinets full of our cemetery records. There is an Excel backup, but that's not a system that can be maintained. It's not a robust system. It can't be added to. You can't embellish it with any kind of file or picture or citation, which you could with a cemetery management software package, which is where we're headed, in my conversation anyway. The transition to the next generation, the next director, will be very difficult without something in place which captures this historical information, day-to-day information, and also is able to convey all those quirks that went along the way. The prior supervisor had to make his decisions because that's just how it goes in cemetery management. Jim has to make his decisions within the boundaries of the regulations. This is like playing 3D chess. When it gets to the next person, you got to figure out what happened and where and what that notation means and how these things got switched here, and does that lot number really convey to that lot number because they're on different pages. And all that could be maintained in a relational database and coordinated. The subsurface information that we have is almost nil, actually. You saw in the greater report the diagrams of the cemetery. Section C, which is the one that's underway right now, is full of ledge. At one point, a boulder the size of a Volkswagen was taken out of a possible grave. You can't continue to know, you can't estimate what your longevity is in the cemetery if you can't tell what's underneath the surface. With ground penetrating radar, you can determine subsurface materials, and if you get a deeper GPR, as they call it, look, you can determine objects as well. And lastly,
to expand on that point, there are numerous graves available in Section C, which, in talking with Gary, he just did not attack them just from previous burials that we've done. You know, it's obvious to see that there's a giant ledge here, which extends into this grave. So, you know, those aren't sold due to that fact. And sometimes we couldn't even put a cremation in there, which is only 20 inches deep. So to know what's under there is imperative to be able to, you know, expand in the C section. I'm sorry.
No, love it. Just a little bit about what you're talking about in terms of how we manage the land that's there. So lots are sold. A lot would be 4 graves or 6 graves. If you sell a lot to a couple and they use 2, let's say a lot of 4 and 2 are used, you're utilizing 50% and you're not utilizing 50%. Burials are done differently now than they were 30 years ago. 30 years ago, everyone got a grave in the family. That's not happening anymore. The whole family doesn't get buried there anymore. Kids don't want to be buried with their parents, I'm sorry to say. Cremations are much more popular than they used to be. So you're increasingly selling lots that aren't being fully utilized. There's an easy, flexible way to go around that, and Jim, with a heart of gold, has managed to satisfy everybody's needs, but we need policy to reflect today's wishes of people that want to be buried, today's families. The policies we can work with, it's my understanding the select board needs to stamp those as policies. But we think all the policies should be looked at and brought into today's needs. Green Cemetery, we believe, based on 2024 run rate, will be exhausted in about 8 years. So to put that in perspective, you saw this in the bigger report. We looked at a smaller piece of the Vanta Davis corridor that the graves are on, and that little piece would buy us, at great expense, maybe a couple of years. And actually, that'd be a pretty big piece.
Expense, give us a rough idea.
Don't have that yet.
Okay.
Sorry. So let's move on, because I don't want to keep you on that topic too long. So I just put a couple of these things up here. So we're talking about the cemetery management software. I'm just going to race through a couple of visuals. What you saw in the bigger report was we don't have a cemetery software. We have paper, and there's an Excel spreadsheet, and some work was done to make it interactive. You can use Google to find the grave. When you're entering a record in cemetery management software, we've been working with this company called Ramaker, actually, and they call theirs cemetery information management software. But you get a graphical user interface, or GUI as we used to call it, and you see the graves. There's a legend there. Some are free, some are not free, some are obstructed. And can you go to the next slide, please, Ryan? Up in the upper right, you have little icons. So you can populate the graves with what's appropriate. You can actually tilt. See that little coffin in the middle? Mm-hmm. It's been tilted because, as Jim will tell you, you come across some weird things. The vessel may shift. The contents may move from one grave to the next. So if you have a lot of 4 and number 3 has shifted, 4 may be compromised. You need to know that. So these graphical user interface, these maps are built out of 4 layers. There's a drone run, there's a GIS the town provides, and there's information from the ground penetrating radar, and the 4th one would be any additional information that Jim could provide. So this is a very accurate, fully informed interface of what could be used as a burial reference. So yes, we know that grave is available, for example. So this burial record is also available. Did I put it in here? Can you go to the next slide, please? So now what we have with our walk to grave, as they call it, capability is a Google map. And you can go to the next one, because I'm running out of time. What you would get with cemetery management software is the Office version on your phone. So you have that nice, attractive and helpful information loaded image on your phone, and it gives you breadcrumbs right to the grave. And if you can imagine Memorial Day, you're actually getting you can bring down the information of the person in front of you, and everything can be masked or screened, so you don't need to, you don't release anything you don't want to release.
Chelmsford Public Cemeteries has that. They have a QR code you can scan with your phone. You type in the name of the deceased you want to go see. Walk to grave capability takes you right there.
Right on the grave, right?
Right on the
QR code?
So right at the entrance.
No, it's at the gate. Yeah.
So they have on this, you can upload pictures of the decedent and all that. But just going back a little bit, I know I don't want to extend everything, but here's an example of an older grave. These go back from early 1800s all the way up until 1950. We're still burying them here.
Wow.
So this is a 16 by 16 lot with a large family headstone in the middle. And back in the day, Elijah would say, I want to be buried here. And this person would say, I want to be buried here. So now, current day, if one of these family members passes away, okay, and they say, well, I want to be buried here. There's no way of telling where this person is without physically prodding around with a bar.
Oh,
until
geez.
you hit the coffin or the vault that it's in. So this image software would tell me, I can't go there. I can, there's a space available right here. I can walk right on and get it done without disrupting any previous interments.
But that presumes there's a analysis, a subsurface analysis done.
Right. That would go with, that would be the
Right.
cemetery manager.
And that's part of the software package?
Yeah.
They provide a service of doing a
Yes, they
scan,
do.
essentially?
Yep,
They use ground penetrating software?
yes,
And that's a one-time, like a baseline thing, or?
yes.
Under the cemetery, I'm assuming it's there.
I'm sorry, Gordon, just workflow, just trying to illustrate this for the board, because Gary passed it off to Jim. They know the graves that were tilted the way they are, so they would know not to dig in a certain area. You would lose that knowledge from person to person. So being able to put it in a software would allow us to train a new director, even if Jim just vanished, to not do that, because it would be pretty horrific, right? So just an example of how when you have a 40-year director, it makes sense. They know where everyone's buried, literally. That's not going to be in the future.
I've been director for 2 years, and oftentimes I am for about an hour until I can figure out who's who and where they are. So
And if something happened to that book?
this is kept in a fireproof safe in my office. That's why this needs to be
Hopefully it's
recorded.
copied.
Guarded with your
somewhere.
life. It's
Just
not?
Excel spreadsheet, and it's not
You didn't like
fully.
You would scan it?
Julie did. Julie, when she got here, she was horrified, and she scanned those immediately.
Yeah.
Ah.
This is the oldest of 4 logbooks. I have 4 logbooks covering each section of the cemetery.
Gordon, I don't want to cut you short, but I also want to get to, if you have an ask, is there something with
Yes.
the CPC that you're going to talk about? We'd love to hear that.
Yes, well, the historical part of this is woven throughout it. So let's move to recommendations. I'll run right through this. We talked about the cemetery software, ground penetrating radar, coordination of activities. We need some way to, everyone's doing something in Green Cemetery. We need some kind of clearinghouse or central group that coordinates these activities, is able to maintain them on a current basis and report to town administration. And registration of the cemeteries on the National Register of Historic Places is actually something that's been teed up and is being looked at now.
I'm sorry, when you say activities, what are, give me some examples of some of the
Yeah.
activities that
So,
go on in Green.
Let's just say
This is,
someone wants to, or is involved in refurbishing gravestones, or Wilson Chapel.
Okay.
Or one of the arches.
Putting the Revolutionary War markers.
Markers,
Putting
okay.
the markers on. There are different groups that have different interests.
Yep,
And we don't always know about them.
okay.
I don't know who the "we" is. Probably town administration needs to know. Because there are people that.
Well, plus the different groups, right? If you
Yeah.
have an
Yeah.
event you're doing in Wilson Chapel, like the Historical Society did,
Right.
right? And then
Yeah.
at the same time, there's a burial going on or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The town used to have a cemetery commission,
Mhm.
and I don't know why you don't anymore, but you
Mm.
need something like that.
Mhm.
You need a body
Mhm.
to handle all of
Coordinate,
the different,
yeah.
coordinate everything.
Yeah,
But right now, we have you. That's good.
But they're not,
yeah.
it's not their charge, though.
Well,
I mean,
the,
let me just one thing on the National Register of Historic
Sure.
Places. I don't know if you've had a chance to check in with Chrissy O'Shea from our Historic Commission.
Yes, I've
but-
been emailing with her.
Yeah, that would be really good to do, because I think there's both the National Register and there's a state registry, and it would be good to really look closely at the benefits and the cons of having the cemetery registered.
I have
Yeah.
worked with a consultant who did National Register nominations. I worked with him for 10 years. He did them for our local town, which was in Connecticut, and I was the archivist at the Historical Society, so he did his work in my archive.
Yeah, no, I saw that
So,
in the
so I'm
CPA
very
application,
familiar
but it's more
with it.
thinking about this particularly Green Cemetery or the Central Burying Ground. I mean, we only have 2 residences that are actually on the historic.
I
And
know.
so just making sure we have thought that through before we go ahead and try to
But it
have
does
the
not
nomination
prevent
go
you
in.
from doing anything at all with your property. It's your property. It's listed on the National Register. It automatically gets listed on the state register if it's on the national. You can do anything. If it's a house or a school or a church, you can knock it down. And the National Register of Historic Places will not say to you, why did you do that? They won't say anything because they just don't concern themselves with that. It's an interesting factoid, I think, that Middlesex County in Massachusetts has more properties on the National Register of Historic Places than any county in the United States. And of all of those things in Middlesex County that are listed, how many does Carlisle have? It has 2. And they were put on the National Register in 1990. 2 old houses.
Yeah.
So I don't know why that is. When I read that, I was amazed.
I'm glad you're so knowledgeable.
Yep. Okay, so the ask is, the next slide actually summarizes the software component of this. And the small print is in the bigger report circulated to you folks. But it's essentially $41,000 covers everything to set up the relational database, the handheld version of it as well, the drone scan, the ground penetrating radar, the burial search portal, etc. And then there's a $2,100 annual fee for maintenance. So this is with the Ramaker, as they pronounce it, Ramaker software, which we would use as a proxy for this type of software in service. I'm not saying this is.
What do you mean by a proxy?
There are a lot out there.
But it sounds like you like SIM.
We do, because we went to we visited a lot of cemeteries, we talked to a lot of supervisors. There are 3 that are using SIMs in the nearby vicinity. Little Ayer, which is about comparable to us in size, is using SIMs, and they aren't even an active cemetery. They got it because they went from a privately operated cemetery to a town-operated cemetery, and they got SIMs on board because they like the support. They're getting handheld and moving the records, and they are doing it solely to preserve their historical records. And they take great pride in their cemetery. And I went out there, it's a beautiful cemetery. It's cut in half by a road, so there's south and north. But they just love it, and they did this great effort to maintain it.
Is there any possibility, does the cemetery have a revolving account, or, I mean?
Perpetual care.
Perpetual care, would that cover the annual,
The 2,100?
2,100?
No, but we could fit this into our software budget, and given the impact it would have on the DPW, I would strongly recommend it.
Okay, I just wanted.
And this has been submitted as a CPA request, the upfront.
The 41,000.
41,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Is there any liability by not keeping proper records?
Yes.
Yeah, probably just for the simple fact of some of these pages are so delicate that, it's like and if they were to be lost in the fire, there's no way to tell who's buried where within that specific lot. And
I can see that
so
would be a
so,
problem.
for example, just a quick example, this is from the middle section of the cemetery. Wilson Chapel is located right here, so this is how it is laid out way back in the day. I know it's in very small print, but it goes from like 1 to whatever, and then the names are written under there. So some of these places don't have headstones, so when I try to find them, I'll look for the closest person that has a headstone and then have to measure back. Going by, the current measurements are 3.5, for a 1 grave lot, 3.5 by 10. So if it's a 2 grave, obviously it'd be 7 feet wide, 3 grave,
And my point is, it just seems to me we've sold these plots, and there's an expectation that we maintain these plots accurately. And if we don't do that, I could see there would be a legal financial liability by not maintaining.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but I agree, that's a great
So
point.
far,
I'm
so
not
good.
up on cemetery
I
law,
think in the
but
regulations, it says that mistakes are frowned upon but not
Okay, sorry.
held liable for.
So actually, you get to this next tier of recommendations,
Yeah.
a little bit longer term, because archival digitization of all records is something that we believe is very important. Website evaluation, I always put that in. Grave rehabilitation, we have some tilting headstones, just like the Central Burial Ground. I'm running through this because I know we're running out of time. Policy review, we've talked about a little bit. Pathway signs is something that's actually really nice, and every cemetery we've been to that has them, we go, oh, this is great. You know, it's nice to know that Mom's on Elm Street, or, you know, it gives you a sense of place in a cemetery. I'm big on those. Anyway, the last one is expansion recommendation, and I didn't spend a lot of time on this on purpose because it's huge. And there's two areas have come up to our attention for expansion that have been talked about before. There's Banta Davis land, and there's something called Levitt land. Now, Banta Davis we've heard about before. It's 72, 73, it's in the town records. Banta Davis was given to the town with the cemetery and school as primary uses. Hasn't seen the cemetery yet, so it's just something to think about. Levitt land was given to the town in 1938, was it? By the Levitt family, expressly to be used for the cemetery because it abuts the cemetery. It's right there. Gary Davis walked in and said, it's too wet, done. May not be anymore. It's right there, worth a look. So the point is, it's out there, and I don't know what the steps are to consider expansion, but it's going to be, you know, does a town want to expand?
David, between Spalding Field and the cemetery.
All right, so it's adjacent to.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's adjacent to it.
abuts it.
It's
Or
on
the
the
path.
town, the Trails
Path
Committee
would be,
map of Banta Davis has it right
or
on it.
walk.
You can see it.
Right.
So, does the town want to expand cemetery capacity? I think would be question one. And then how do you get to that? There's be money for looking into everything. So I'll let you guys figure that out.
Like
but-
surveying, land clearing,
Sure.
filling.
I mean, I asked earlier and Gordon didn't have an answer, but I mean, we own the land, right? So it's not acquisition, it's getting it ready.
Right.
Any idea what, like, kind of rough?
It all came to light from Susan's research, so it's very, very new
There
to
must be
us.
stuff out there, people are doing that, right? They're converting land to cemeteries?
How much it costs.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, like what? Is it 6 figures, 7 figures? I have
I don't know. We've had 8 or 9 meetings. We've been
You've
a
done a
group.
lot of work, I'm just asking, like, in your discussions, like, that hasn't come up like the size of that, has it?
So I think, 8 years is based off the current run rate, we're
Yes.
calling it. I used to call it burn rate, which is terrible. So
Well, their cremation
but that's
is
to
fine.
sell them, right? It would still be operational after everything was sold. The question is,
you run out of
with the
room.
existing space now, do you want to try to extend that life by doing something like making the cemetery cremation only, or changing the way that plots are sold? And short of that, do you want to continue to provide cemetery services in the town of Carlisle? So it's not just expansion, it's,
Right.
do you want to expand first? And then if you do,
So
where-
let me ask you again, Gordon, so you talked about like the old historical 4 to 6 plot.
Yes.
So a family back in antiquity bought this plot, and 2 of the 6 are occupied, and the family's long gone. Like, they still own those 6? Like,
Yes.
and is there any way, because you mentioned like we could maybe
I think
use
it'd
some
be
of
un-
those spaces?
I think it'd be difficult to claw back those 4 spaces.
I mean, is there anybody to contact even? Let's take the easy case, that there is somebody to contact. Like, do you want to sell back your space? I guess
Could be,
you can do
could be
that, right?
approached, yeah.
Yeah,
There are
okay.
other areas too, David, that, for example, because of the way it was laid out and then populated, there are certain sections of the cemetery that can't accept a headstone and can't
Right.
can't
Yeah,
be
I read that,
used.
yeah.
Those would be great cremation spots.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but, so the repurposing of underutilized plots.
Yes.
What's your thinking on that?
The thinking is the only way to get them back would be to contact the family
What's it-
and see if they want to sell them back, because once they buy it, that's their deed to that piece of land. They
Right,
have
I mean,
that
in
piece of
these
property.
archival records, do we have the well, anyway, it's another story.
I would just, I think we should, as a select board, with your recommendation, you know, at a future meeting,
Yeah, we gotta.
figure out if we want to then create permanent entity, right? And we certainly have 3 good candidates to help with
Can't say
that.
enough
I think
about
that's
the
a good idea.
dedication
Yeah.
of these
We
students.
we'll revisit this and appreciate all your efforts. This
To
is
be
really-
clear, in the short term, there's action on CPA funding. So that's proceeding,
Yeah.
that process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and there's some policy decisions that we could make that sort of low-hanging fruit, right?
Well, the cremation.
Well, not selling 6 plot things for a start, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, be more flexible to today's needs. And lastly, the last bullet is, our, the request was for the task force to go to the report. So we've done that. So we need some instruction going forward, if so desired, on what you want to do about that.
Okay. I think we'll have to discuss this in another meeting, and you know, this is really valuable. And
Yeah.
I appreciate all your.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to do a little bit more work as the task force, but I think it'd be helpful to us to, because you all are very knowledgeable at this point, just what would the scope, if we had some kind of a permanent cemetery entity,
What would they
whether
be
it's a commission.
responsible for?
Right, what would that scope look like?
Yep.
I think some policy,
Yep.
some policy recommendations, I think would be a logical next step too.
Sure.
Yep.
Well, that's what we're looking for. I mean, we'd be the ones, or the group of, whatever, would be the ones to advise on the policy and then present
Right.
it to you. Does
Yeah.
this make
Right.
sense?
Yeah,
Sure.
that'd be great.
So,
Okay.
why don't, yeah, if you
we
wouldn't
need a-
mind, if you'd kind of pursue that, and then we'll reconvene with you at a later date.
We have a meeting set up in 2 weeks. We're gonna do that.
Oh, my gosh. Well, we may not get to it that quickly. Thank you so much for
You're
coming.
welcome.
We
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank you for your
it.
time.
Really
You
appreciate
need
your
to
work.
adjourn your meeting.
Yes, I move that we adjourn our meeting
Yes,
at
adjourn.
8:28.
Yes, I say aye.
Aye.
Right, Dana?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
All right, up next, we have the Cultural Council, or the chairs, co-chairs.
Two chairs sitting on two chairs.
2 chairs.
I just want to say, though, that regarding the cemetery, as far as I know, I'm not there yet.
We'll save you a spot.
I've saved myself a spot.
Serve yourself a pot.
I was going to say something about the cemetery as well.
Depending on
but
how this meeting goes.
I'm in a good neighborhood, though.
I just checked, and there are 8 items in the Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System in the Green Cemetery.
There are 8 what?
8 items are listed in the Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System, which everybody calls MACRIS because it's, but it's right, there are already items listed on the
Is
state
it
register.
like soldiers from the Revolutionary War, or is it
this
actual
is
physical
actual-
artifacts?
This is actually like headstones, like
Oh,
very decorative
okay.
headstones. Probably I didn't go through every single one, but I imagine the
The
gazebo's
chapel?
in there.
Yeah.
Larry Sorley was the person that actually put most of our information into MacBooks. So
Great.
I imagine it's more architectural, is all I'm saying.
Well, thank you for coming. The 2 things that are at least on our agenda, and we defer to you, was the fiscal year '26 budget request, along with the programming update for what you're doing.
That's right.
I guess that's what we're doing. I hope you've read with bated breath every word we presented to you. We have a lot going on. We've been, growing this council pretty steadily over the last several years, and its impact on the town. So we have like really high-level slides just to sort of talk through where we're at, what is this group oops, I'm gonna make noise on the microphone there. So we are in sort of an interesting spot in terms of the cultural environment of town. Every cultural provider, practitioner, producer sort of relates to us, but we don't control everything there. We're just a catalyst. And we've looked at, so we're part of the, if we go to the next slide, that just puts in the environment that we're in. So we're a creature of the state's Mass Cultural Council, set up by the legislature. I included some choice selections from the guidelines and state laws at the end of the packet. but were appointed by the select board. And sometime in the murky past, probably in the 90s, the board agreed to have a cultural council in Carlisle. Every single city and town in the Commonwealth has one, or is part of a regional one. And the minimum requirements to have a cultural council are to have 5 members and to participate in the annual Mass Cultural Council funded grant round that occurs between September 1st and October 15th every single year. And there's plenty of cultural councils right surrounding us that's all they do. And they're pretty dormant the rest of the year, and they're pretty passive. Well, we have always had people on this council, and there's always turnover, it's 100% volunteer, that want to do more and wish we could do more, and have always said if we only had money, we could do more, blah, blah, blah. So we, set out to do those things that more money will help us do, which is to create a more vibrant, more active, and more cohesive cultural environment in town. And if you've read a little bit, the definition of culture is quite broad. It's more than art and music. It's humanities, it's sciences, things like that. And we were fortunate to have your support during the ARPA period when many of these organizations, especially the nonprofits, were just getting creamed with lower donations, inability to sell tickets, all those things. And so we were given responsibility to manage money that would help them recover to a certain degree, a small degree, from the effects of the pandemic. We had financial grants that we gave to 4 nonprofits in Carlisle to help bridge the gap. And then we got money for funding the music festival partially for the first couple of years, and also money to run additional grant rounds. And that's really what I want to focus on with this meeting, is that we have started to get the music festival on a financial footing through the generosity of a key person who's been involved with the festival from the beginning, who is funding $10,000 a year this year and next year, and who knows how much further. And the money that the council is starting to raise through our partnership with the Community Foundation of Metro West is really going to start to make a difference in our ability to continue a major program like that, but also to continue to supplement the grants allocation that we get from the state, because it never goes far enough. And then we really want to talk about the ability to have this second grant cycle that is only open to Carlisle organizations and individuals, so that we can continue to have more people step forward like they have in order to create more programs and events for the town. And this is one of those areas where you get into things like, well, what's the return on investment, et cetera, which is, I know, a big challenge for the select board these days. And we're not the people who can come up with any kind of formula whatsoever to tell you what the answer to that is. What we can tell you, and what is really true, is that what we do directly affects mental health in the community. And there's not a single age group that doesn't benefit from the stuff that we enable to happen. And again, we are sometimes a small contributor to a particular program, like the Savoyard Light Opera has a budget of $33,000, and we maybe grant them $500. But they value that, let me tell you. But the programs that really count on us are the ones where they cost $600 and we give them $500 or $600. The program doesn't really take place unless we step up. So we're not like towns like Concord that have museums and lots of historic sites and hotels and restaurants where you can do what most people in the cultural community do, which is talk about the economic impact. Our economic impact is there. You have to look for it. It's the lecturers that we bring in, that our partners bring in, It's, you know, all of the educational elements that people get from going to events.
And there's also occasions that we can, when we see something like what happened this fall was that the Harvest Fair was cancelled by FRS, and that is a big community event that was suddenly cancelled. And it was like, what can we do as a community, as a cultural council, to create something else, but also help the vendors, the local craftsmen who had lost a place to sell their products. So that's when we actually went out, and within 3 weeks we put together the Open Studios, which was a phenomenal success.
They loved it.
And nobody could believe we did it in 3 weeks, but we just decided this is it, we're going to go for it.
So what we go to the next one, you know, just trying to paint the picture of, you know, where we sit and, you know, the value that we bring to the town and that we've increased and that we have potential to continue to go further. There are about 20 organizations in town producing cultural events. We do support some out-of-town events that involve people who actually are members of the Concord Orchestra or the Concord Women's Chorus. And
The Acton, the theatre group in Acton.
Yes, the Open Door Theater, which is, you know, for disadvantaged folks. So, you know, there's a little money that we do provide to outside organizations, but they have to prove to us that they have a direct benefit to the town. Of course, the music festival, again, there's hundreds of people that have been coming to that now 3 years in a row. And we have some, if I keep my fingers crossed and don't say anything further, we hope to have some exciting things happen there this Old Home Day. And the relationships we have. We put in, if we can go to the next, we have in here, sort of towards the end, some testimonials that we've collected from some of our best partners. But there's just, the reality in fiscal terms is we get so little money from the state that, you know, we have a process that determines which of the applications that come to the state's computer system are qualified based on our requirements and priorities that we set every year. So this is a system. We don't just take money and say, oh, well, I'd love to, Barney, but, you know, Kate's got a better, you know, track record. No, the folks value these grants to the point where they spend hours filling out these applications online and talking to us about, you know, what is the value of this program? What does it bring to the community? What is the budget? How are we going to promote it? And they don't necessarily have to, but they do, because it's sort of a, you know, promotional back and forth. We promote each other's good work, and the visibility really matters to people. So we really can only fund about 40% of the legitimate applications that come in every year from the Mass Cultural Council.
It's very low. What we, you know, our
Yeah.
maximum grant is maybe 600.
Yeah, so, and we tell people up front, you know, that our grants are, you know, up to about $500 or $600.
And the state actually cuts us off at $250. We can't give anything less than $250.
Right.
So
you know, what we've done, because we've had, you know, extra money that we've raised and also through the earmarked ARPA money, is that we've supplemented the state grants. So instead of having about 40% of what people are asking for, we're getting up to 60, 70%. And that's with our money, the council's money. And if you were really diligent and you read all of the nice stuff highlighted at the end here, you see that we have a unique place in town government, and that, you know, we can raise money, we can spend money, but only things that support culture. And so that's our mission. And I think we've proven to be very good stewards of that with, you know, the amount of money that has been trusted to us. And so what we're trying to do is just build on that. You know, I know, Kate, if I can say, you know, and Scott, the ARPA money was given to us without any future promises, and we understand that. And at the time, we were really one of those very sleepy, passive cultural councils in many respects. And now we're not, because we've seen what we can do and we see how the community responds. And that's really what this is all about, is, how can we fuel that? Now, there's never going to be a year when you don't think that, this is the right year for funding such an organization. It's always been something that members have talked about wishing that we could do, and we've asked in the past, and we've said, how do we do that when we can't do this? Well, of course, it's an understandable challenge that you have. But I can tell you that this investment, if you, do take the broad view of what the return on the investment is, it should be, punish me later, it should be a relatively easy, at least defensible thing to be able to say that this is our community, this is what, the folks at the library, the Council on Aging, the Chamber Orchestra, the Savoyard Light Opera, the Race Amity Day, the Pride Festival.
I thought this next one, anyway, so this is.
Yeah, well, this is what we plan to do with the money. So, and what I've done here is highlighted the budget request. This budget request equals the state allocation we got in fiscal '25, right? So we'd be talking about fiscal '26 having the fiscal '25 equivalent of what the state gave us. This is, I put in what we've received in previous years. There's small incremental changes in this every year. But that's roughly been a one-to-one relationship with our population. It's a little bit getting ahead of the population, but it's about one-to-one, close enough. And so that's, we're not going to expect that doubles from the Mass Cultural Council next year. But that, if you look at the fourth line up from the top, is what we want to devote to this second grant round. And that's really what the ask is here, is that we will earmark that money. And you, if you really read this carefully, you can say, we'd really like you to spend the money on this. And this is what we want the money for, and this is what we would respectfully ask you to allow us to do with that money. Have another grant round that produces more programs and more involvement from groups that haven't been active prior to our doing that, going back to 2023 when we ran our first additional grant round. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I could talk, I brought every,
This is final slide. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and we've taken the initiative to come up with a fundraising partner. We started this on December 13th, and we've raised a little bit more than $4,400. But our donor population doubled from 2023, when we were doing a one-to-one members sending emails to people we know in town. And we did, have a pretty good response to that overall. And some fairly large anonymous donors have come through in both years. But we're trying to take that initiative and be able to, you can tell by our budget that we want to spend $25,000 a year, and $5,700 isn't going to do it. So we're trying to get partnerships, we're trying to network, but we also want the town to say, this is important to us, we understand this 100%, and that, we're looking at somewhere in the vicinity of a $1 per capita investment. And that's really the explanation. Now, we do have, I think some choice testimonials. I brought the full letters that I'll give you a copy of. You can read these, the one on the Gleason letterhead, et cetera, because they say more than what we put on there. But that's pretty much our pitch. The programs that we want to do, we just want to do what we do well, is really what we want to do.
And build community.
And build a community further. And I think, again, just as Debbie was pointing out, the ability to jump on an opening like the Open Studios, which was 100% warmly received by the participating artists and craftspeople. And as we drove around to every site, on these 2 days. It was like a cocktail party at pretty much every location. They were well attended. It was jubilant, really, that there was a place in town, and these are at people's residences and barns. So it really was kind of cool. So I should shut up and ask for any questions. I brought every lick of information that I could put my fingers on, except for the questions you're going to ask me.
Any questions from the board?
I just had a question about the fundraising. Obviously, you know, an obvious question is, do you, and I know you've set up the ability to get online donations now, which is a great help.
Yeah.
But do you not think that fundraising activities could bridge the budget gap versus a town budget? I mean, these are all great events, and we know we have generous community. With that, the success and the growth of these events combined with your ability to take online donations now,
well,
do you think that funding request is achievable privately, or what are your goals?
Well, I think we stated the goals in the sort of budget snapshot of how much we would like to do in an optimal situation.
But in terms of revenue,
but
I mean,
in terms of fundraising,
$5,000 in a month and a half.
Right. This was last
at the optimum time of year.
I would say that all but about $400 of that was in the final quarter of 2024.
Right.
Right. I also, we've put additional pitches out since then, and they've not been met with that sort of exuberance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is a very difficult fundraising environment. Of course, I think we also hit right around the time of the California wildfires, which I think just, took people's attention away with their thinking about donating to whatever, and, I'm included. I'm skeptical that we could close that gap. This is the first year that we've done a town-wide mailer in and amongst all the other groups in town that are doing the same thing, and also have their hopes and aspirations. So I'm skeptical at this point that we could do that, certainly without a lot of effort.
Yeah, I think
now this gets back to, we've got 9 people on the council, other than me, all have jobs and commitments where we have no professional support. Not that we're asking for it, but it's a heavy lift to just keep on doing things without becoming annoying.
We have had ideas, but it takes a lot of effort. I think that's the answer. And so and we're also trying to do all these other things. So it's one of those.
I guess my naive view is if you can sponsor these events and simply just have like the QR code now at the events, you'd like to think that.
Well, clearly, yeah.
That alone would. I don't know anything about that. But
I'm just, right now, it's completely unproven that we can, have that. I know for a fact, and this, I'm trying not to speak out of school, but, take an organization like Old Home Day, which is completely independent, private, nonprofit, and is just not hitting the benchmarks that they want to hit for, beyond the pandemic. So, I think it's a challenging environment. I haven't talked to every one of the organizations that we sort of compete with now in town, like the Historical Society, Friends of Gleason, Friends of COA. They're all trying to do the same thing, and if anybody has any insight into their success. But they all get a little, they're working for town departments, those friends groups. They're working to support town departments that have budgets, and they have the ability to fund some stuff that sort of overlaps with us, but they also have the needs that go well beyond the cultural programs that they produce, and we're trying to supplement that. This is definitely because we have a competitive grant environment. You can't really look at this as a zero-sum game in terms of that. You can't give to us and take from them, because they may not get from us, But it's just, to me, it's early to say, how successful and sustainable we're going to be doing the fundraising. I expect we're going to do okay, because we're gonna keep working at it, you know?
And we can plug it. at
I
the
don't
music
think,
festival.
I think it's a pretty nice ask in a certain respect, the fact that it's tied to a match. That it is $1 per capita.
How's it tied to the town match?
Well, because it's tied to the state match. It's tied to the state.
Oh, it is?
Well, that's.
We're asking that, that's
That's what they're,
was their
the
ask.
ask.
we're not trying to make it a policy
Oh, okay,
decision.
but it's not like CPA where we put money in, okay.
No,
No,
we're
no.
asking you to please,
Okay, I
please
understand.
match
Of course,
the
yeah.
state allocation.
And I guess
No,
I do have a question for CPA. Is there any capacity in CPA for this?
Does it qualify?
Yeah, does it qualify so that's not coming out
Plenty
of
of capacity.
operation? Yes. Out of the other budget.
Does it qualify?
Only
I
if-
don't
only if
think
you're doing
so.
something is, I mean, I think it would be, you'd have to be so
Good
specific,
question.
like historical.
Yeah.
You know, we don't
Yeah,
do
we-
housing.
We would ask for $500 for a historical program.
I mean, that
and
that
that's-
would be, yeah,
Right.
you know. I
Does
mean,
the state give any credit for towns that contribute to the cultural councils? Like, does it?
They throw their love to you.
But I mean, do they give you any extra grants?
They don't.
Okay.
You know, there are potentially other grants that we can go after, but, you know, we.
It can be seen as a matching grant, which means, you know, we don't know what's gonna happen in the future. I don't think anyone does.
Right.
But it may be a case of, we can give you this. For instance, we got money from the state for, festival grant, but we're now not eligible anymore because they only give them out once every so many years to
It's
each
every,
town.
it's every 3 years, so we,
And-
you know, we
But
counted
again,
on
it's a
that.
competitive grant,
It's a
and,
competitive grant,
but if
exactly.
you're seen to have a matching grant, you might, you know, if the state changes its rules, that would benefit.
Yeah, I'm not gonna,
We don't know, I mean.
the festival grant people are different than.
No, I'm just saying,
They don't
I'm
care
just
about
giving
us.
an example of where we don't know what the state is going to do. The state doesn't at this point.
I will say there's other organizations that support culture in the state and the country that we haven't ever looked at. But again, that's a bandwidth issue. And also, you know, at this point in time, I'm not sure how sanguine we should be about, you know, the health of the cultural community in the nation going forward. But that's, you know, a personal opinion.
Did you, Mark, have you guys come in front of the FinCom for the request too?
No, and, you know,
How does
honestly.
that work?
So I can answer that. So the FinCom discussed any additions to the budget. This was in
Yeah.
addition to the budget. Because they're a child of the select board, they wanted the select board to say.
So we're first. We
Yes.
decide and then the other.
So if you say it's in, then it's in.
Okay,
If you
I
say
got it.
it's out, it's
Yeah,
out.
and again, I'll get back to you cannot talk about return on investment much here.
No, I mean, right. I
except-
wasn't going in that direction. I just was, whatever the process is.
I mean, there is a return, we all know it,
Right.
you know, but it's not something I'm gonna, put on my calculator.
Chair, what's your process? What do you want to do?
Well, I think we have to decide as a select board if this is something we want to support or not support. I mean, tonight, we've listened to everyone who's come before us has had a funding request, starting with the Highland Building and then the cemetery,
I know.
and, you know, and after you is the 250th
I know.
celebration.
We gave them some money, though.
We've already supported them, but
Yeah.
not to the extent they need.
It's,
You know?
it's up to us, you know, this is why we're elected, is to, you know, try and sort this out for the town, and we look at, you know, using kind of the master plan of sorts as a guiding thing where there's different components in town that are important. You know, we do have fiscal sustainability is important, and we have a lot of people who, you know, want to live in the community, but we also have a community, and so you have these types of things
Exactly.
that are,
We
you know, build a community, so it's a.
Just, you
Well,
know,
we have
just.
caring community, and
We have
I do
caring
know
com-
that we did have, you know, this person here who worked with the cheer program, you know, during, you know, cheer project, or was that what it's called?
Cheer team,
Anyway,
yeah.
and it is important to mental health and to community building, this kind of
And we
thing.
really.
So it does fit into our master plan.
It does.
It does definitely in several places, actually, but we're also, we're a permanent entity. And, you know, we have a continuing role to play in the health of the community.
Yeah.
Well, does anyone want to make a motion on supporting this? I don't know if there's other way to do it other than, either.
Unless you want to, you wait a cycle, that's the question.
I think we
We
wait.
queue up all these requests, and we didn't do that with the other guys, right?
Yeah, we haven't even heard anything from FinCom yet on the budget.
Yeah.
So.
Are you keeping, I presume, a list of the asks that are outside you got the regular budget and then the other asks, right? And when were we gonna go over all that?
So the FinCom is currently looking at, as you heard reference tonight, 2% cuts to all the major departments and what that would look like and how it attacks the so-called deficit.
Okay.
So then that list would be given to you when they have a recommendation on it.
And does that include the big deficit on the capital plan? Is that part of it? You made?
Separate recommendation, but yeah.
Okay, and all of that comes together like when?
Probably 2 meetings from now.
Okay, so I mean, it should go on the list, right?
It's definitely on the list.
Yeah.
So is that?
So may I, it's, if it's okay with you, I mean, I approached you last year for the FY25 budget. And, I think we're always going to be able to make a good argument, right? Because, it's a good argument to be made. And I think, I'm not sure what the situation was last year, but as it turns out, it was in draft number 1, and it was taken when it got compressed. And this is the same thing that appears to be happening and I just, as I said at the beginning, I don't know which year that's never going to be the case, and that this will make sense for the select board. Because
I don't know,
back in, in the early times, it wasn't put in. If it was put in, we'd be asked for a 2% cut in our plan, but it wasn't there. So.
But last year, and we had ARPA, right? We had some other sources. So taking it out isn't quite the same when there was ARPA, right? Now it's like it's got to get squeezed in. But it seems like last year I wasn't part of that, but it would have been an easier thing to remove because we knew we could fund it a different way. And in fact, you did get funded a different way, right?
Yeah,
So I would
we'd
enjoy that parallel
already
company.
been funded, it's true.
Well, I just want to say, the reason I haven't said anything, and I've had to bite my lip a couple of times, is that because I am a member of the Carlisle Community Chorus, and we've received a small grant, but regularly from the Cultural Council, I feel like I have to recuse myself from the conversation. So it's not that I'm not interested.
Okay.
Can I, for my own benefit, when you give a grant to, say, the Carlisle Women's Chorus or the Chamber Orchestra, they have an event.
Mm-hmm.
People attend the event. I'm sure there's fundraising to support that event. And how does this all, like, you support them, that reduces their costs, they do some fundraising. Are those events an opportunity for your fundraising or for their fundraising? Or like, where do you live in that, when you sponsor an event like that, where is the Carlisle Cultural Council in terms of people's visibility?
They have to use our logos on all the, any events. If they're in the Mosquito, you'll see the logo is there.
Who's the Cultural Council?
No, any program that we fund has to.
This little logo here.
Has
It's
to
there.
include reference, specific
Right.
language and reference to our logo, et cetera, et cetera. When they produce a program booklet or something,
Right.
we're mentioned in it.
Right.
But for us to try to
But it's
get
not your event.
fundraising at their
Yes.
event is a little bit
It's not
pushy.
your, it's not,
No,
it's not your event.
We don't run the events.
And
We run the
money
two
that-
we talk about.
that they provide to, say, yours. That money offsets some expenses that allows you to do something else, presumably, or do more
Yeah,
events.
in the case of
Concerts are
the.
free. They're
Yeah.
free to the community.
In the case of
Yeah.
the community chorus, we fund almost 100% of what they're asked,
Okay.
what their budget is.
They couldn't plan an event if they didn't have some revenue, right?
Right.
They couldn't plan it and
Well, it's a
hope to raise the
membership.
money
You
to
have
pay
get a
for it
membership.
at the event.
But
Right.
these separate groups, do you do fundraising for the chorus?
They do.
Or no?
well, not generally. There's a donation box out at the concert.
Right.
But that's about it.
Right.
Yeah,
It's,
and-
it's your donation box, it's not your donation
Right,
box.
exactly. It's back to the
That's
chorus.
right, and
Yeah.
again, I think it would be
Well, it-
crossing a bit of a line to do that.
Well, that's
but-
what I'm processing is, I say, oh, you sponsor all these events, should be easy to fundraise, but if you're not
We're
the
behind the scenes.
primary
Yeah.
fundraiser, you're kind of second in line.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're just giving them seed money, really,
Yeah.
and, I think there's a mutual promotion element to it, that has definitely raised the visibility of not just the council, but our partners, and, there's letters, just look at last Friday, it was a beautiful letter about the Bollywood dance party back in November. And, they count on it, and again, they value it enough that they go through this, hash making cycle to apply, and, they wait patiently to hear, and we try not to disappoint. So, again, the role that we're asking you to play is help us to, keep the thing thriving and growing, and understand that it's hard for you folks, I understand, to, toe this line and say you're being consistent, but the community wants and needs it at the same time. And, just pretend we're like a fire hydrant, even though we don't have one. You need to have the spigot. You gotta have the spigot. So, we exhausted you? Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you for all the work you guys do,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
don't, it's, there's,
For your spare time.
Thanks.
It's just the full
not-
contents of
our
it.
deliberation on this is not a reflection of the value we know it provides to the community. I think it's,
We understand.
yeah.
All right. Thank you. We are just about on time here well, we've got a few extra minutes. This is
But we can bring them up, right?
9:10. We can bring them up early.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be 9, so.
Oh, is it supposed to be 9? Okay.
Supposed to be 9?
It says 9:10 on my.
It doesn't matter, let's bring them up.
Yeah.
All right,
If
so
they're all
we'll
here,
move on
let's
to the
go.
250th Concord 250th discussion. Hello, Scott.
Good evening.
So if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, go ahead and present.
Scott Evans, I live at 299 Heald Road, but before I get going, wear the hat just so you would
You get a
forget
coin?
why I'm here. Yes.
Ooh.
So, this is to keep on your desk, in your
Is
pocket.
this payola, what is going on?
I bought one of these and I haven't gotten it yet, so. This is
Nice.
home delivery.
Yeah, you remember. All about your
I hope the value of this isn't more than $50.
I was gonna say,
I'm not supposed to accept it if
Right.
it is.
The one you ordered.
At least not
oh,
today,
You get an
right?
extra one.
Are we allowed to accept these?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I made note of, he was the only member of the board that ordered a coin online.
Yeah.
He gets the brownie point.
So far.
So far. Okay,
Excellent.
so, why am I here? So I'm here representing the Carlisle 250 Public Safety Group, which is made up of your Chair of the Board, Travis Snell. We have Chief Amendola, Sergeant Booth, we have Brian Sorrows, Jim Hall, Ryan McLean. So we've represented most of the departments that are involved with the logistics for the 250 events that are upcoming. I'm also chair of the celebrations committee and the subcommittee, which is 250 events. So we're planning a lot of these events we've done so far in town, as well as I sit on the 250 board in Concord for militia and minute company communications and coordination. And I'm captain of the Carlisle Minutemen. So as you can tell, my life is pretty much all about the 250. What's the best way? Is this a PowerPoint slide?
Just tell me when to go.
I just tell you when to go. Great. All right. So I prepared a few slides here to provide some context around what this public safety group has been working on, which is how do we allow the Carlisle citizens to celebrate this basically once-in-a-lifetime event, right? Every 50 years, essentially, in Concord, and be able to do it safely and effectively. Okay, next slide. All right. So a little background here. So we're working on cost estimations and logistics for this, and we're really talking about Patriots Weekend. It's the evening of the 18th, and it's all day the 19th in Concord. It also involves, of course, several other towns, right? There's Lexington, Concord, the National Park, and Lincoln, with other events that are outside of the ones directly in Concord on Saturday and Saturday night. Concord, when they looked at the number of visitors that they're expecting, they had 120,000 they estimated at the bicentennial. They looked at projections, and they're estimating somewhere between 150 and 200,000 visitors on Saturday in downtown Concord, obviously at the Dawn Salute and the parade. And they're having a block party now Saturday afternoon, and then an evening laser show in Concord Center. As they did in the bicentennial, Concord is going to close access to the town of Concord for motorized vehicles. It's all along Route 2 and access towards Concord Center, and it is along the Carlisle border, and partway in from the Bedford border. So essentially you can't access the town of Concord without going through some checkpoint barrier. They have what they call soft closings on the outside, where you cannot go through if you're not a town resident, and then closer in towards the center of town where it's a hard closure with no vehicles that can get by. You obviously can walk, bike, horseback, other modes of transportation. Next slide, yeah. So our objective here is to A, inform the town citizens about what events are going on, as well as provide them some means of being able to access these events in the town of Concord. The one specifically that would be on the Saturday that would be of interest, the Dawn Salute starts at 6 a.m. at the North Bridge. The Patriots Day Parade is 8:30 to 1 o'clock. The block party 2 to 6, and 6 to 9 p.m. is that laser light drone show that they're doing in the center of town. This really provides the framework of when they're keeping the town of Concord closed. Essentially, we met early last fall with the Concord Public Safety group and found out what were their plans at that point. So they're going to close the town at 6 o'clock Friday evening, and they think they'll open it back up again around 11 p.m. Saturday night. In Carlisle specifically, we have two events on that Saturday morning. So 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. we have a reenactment of the alarm and the response to the Minutemen, and we do a ceremony, flag raising, and narrate the historical events of that morning before we begin a march to the North Bridge, known as the Estabrook Trail Walk. So that usually is about 7 a.m. that we step off on that and walk the Estabrook Trail down to essentially the visitor center above the North Bridge, where we join in the Patriots Day Parade. Now, as I said, in the bicentennial year, 1975, same scenario. Concord closed its borders, and the Carlisle organizations designated two parking areas, the Indian Hill area and the Knoll Farm area, as places where the town citizens could park along either side of the road, and then they provided shuttle buses from those locations to a point near the North Bridge in Concord. So on River Road, it went down to almost Fenn School, Redcoat Lane, but Ford was landing at Fenn, so they only went down to Redcoat Lane. And then on Concord Road or Lowell Road in Concord, it went down to Farmers Cliff. So every 30 minutes, or as soon as the bus was full, they shuttled town citizens down to those 2 points. And they did it between 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. They didn't run a bus for the dawn salute. That was at 6 a.m. So that was what was done in '75. Go to the next slide. So we looked at it and said, okay, so there's a model that worked. I researched through the Carlisle mosquito and I saw all the prep leading up to it. I read all the reports afterwards looking for, okay, so here's what they planned and how did it turn out? Where were the problems that they had? And by and large, other than maybe some people celebrating that maybe had a little too much or were lying in the middle of the road and things like that that required some medical help. As far as the parking is concerned, the shuttle bus service that was concerned, it all ran quite smoothly. They had close to 1,000 trail walkers that walked the Estabrook Trail. I know that because I have the Minuteman records that they recorded every coin they handed out as well as the other ones that shuttled down. And then they estimated about how many other town citizens went to Concord. And if I just looked at they ended up having 8 buses. And if I just did a quick calculation, it looked like it was somewhere around another 2,000. They had a little over 3,000 of the citizens in town that went to that. So it looked like we should maybe look at that same model. It worked then and doesn't look like it applies today. It looks like a good solution. Try to separate people walking from car traffic and try to control the number of visitors that will all be in a very short period of time. So most people are going to want to get to Concord between, let's say, 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. if the parade steps off at 8:30. So it's about 2.5 hours of the majority of people that either can't ride their bike or can't walk would be taking a shuttle bus to get to Concord. So we put together a number of, well, before I go to that, go to the next slide because I have kind of a couple of pictures just in case, just so you can kind of envision what's, I can point to, but I can't point to people on TV, but.
I'll follow you.
Okay. So from 5 to 6 a.m., we have reenactors coming to the center of town, as well as town citizens that want to participate in that ceremony and either walk the Estabrook Trail walk or potentially take a shuttle bus to Concord so that they can see the parade.
So Scott, let me just, so the color coding is missing from the left, is that why we can't?
The color coding is, if it's blue, it's the early people coming
Right, so it's
into the center of
time-phased, right,
town.
yeah.
And then, starting at 6 a.m. Is the ceremony. on
So
the
if
green.
you want to get to the center of town, you can or cannot drive to the center of
You
town?
can. So we're planning to have some designated parking. So we did a calculation of how many parking spaces are there in the center of town. And it turns out that there's about 390 parking spaces. If we use the Congo Church, we use all along Church Street, we use the school parking lot, we use Town Hall. If we add all those up, we have close to 400 parking spaces. The reenactors themselves and the visitors that are with them or the families that are with them will comprise about 150 or so presenters on the green, right? So it was about something about 70 cars or 60 cars just for them. We said they had somewhere close to 600 or 700 were on the green and 75, so I said, okay, let's assume a similar kind of number. So,
And you're checking with the churches and stuff too?
what's that?
You're checking with the churches and the school to make
Yeah,
sure it's all
yeah,
approved?
yeah, exactly. So, take about 1,000, if you roughly say 2 to 3 people in a car, encourage people to carpool, it absorbs about 300 parking spaces, so there's a little extra room. So the idea would be, if you want to see the reenactment, or you're part of the reenactment, you could park in the center of town.
And
it would
if
be-
people don't want to walk the trail, there'll be a shuttle bus from the center?
Right. And it would be badged parking. So this is something we still have to work out the logistics, but it would be, you could park there as long as you had permission and you got a badge ahead of time. You could put on your dash that says you can park in those parking spaces. So at the same time, you're gonna have people that would go to these 2 parking areas, Indian Hill and over here on Knoll Farm. So they're the ones that they don't want to go to the towns, to the ceremony in the center of town, and they don't wanna walk, so they're gonna go ahead and take a shuttle to Concord. Yeah,
And
Travis.
those are residents?
Those are residents.
Those are
Carlisle residents
Carlisle
only.
residents only?
Yeah. So I'm only talking about Carlisle
Yep.
residents here, so yeah, I should clarify
Do
that.
they get badges as well, or how do you separate them out?
So we're talking about badging even for these 2 areas here. And if you wanted to, say you want to park in the Indian Hill, you'd get an Indian Hill one. If you wanted to park over off of River Road, you would get one for over there. And it would be first come, first serve, right? So if we sold all of these out, which are about 600 or so parking spaces, well then, if you want to go, you got to park over on Knoll Farm. So we're still just talking town citizens, they all have credentials essentially to be able to park in these locations that are here. And, of course, take the shuttle buses.
So they get those permitting things online, something like that?
I think we're talking about doing it in person, and using, maybe some voluntary labor with a town registration or something like that. Like when you come in to vote, you give your address, you mark down your location you want to park at, and we record it and give you the badge, right? Something like that. We're also having the event 250 committee has planned a colonial fair on the green, March 15th, and in FRS.
Oh, up here, okay.
Yeah.
So that'll give the chance.
That'll be a, 10 to 3, all things colonial, fife and drum, and musket firing, et cetera. And our thought was, why not have a table in there
Right.
where people coming would then get their parking credentials. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, you can always have some people that aren't necessarily going to have responded, or at last minute that, oh, I didn't think to bring it or whatever. And I think then at these access points, there'd be people there to check before they go in. They would say, okay, just show me your license. You got a Carlisle address? Okay, go ahead.
But you
Won't be perfect.
like Rich would know this because he put it on City in the Woods.
Yeah.
The dump sticker thing, right? I used your little link. Boom, you go in. Ba-boom. Credit card done. Like, what's wrong with that?
I'll leave that up to the committee. I'm not a member
Yeah.
of the committee. The
Yeah.
reason I'm here is because I have figured out how to put 860 cars at the high school, which has 254 parking spots for the Kicks for Cancer. So
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna be actively involved in those yellow areas up there.
Okay.
Great, so we
I-
can double our parking spaces, is what you're saying.
I do like the badging and the event on the 15th and these sorts of things, because it.
No, I agree with that. I'm
awareness.
just saying,
Pick up your bid.
the online tools are there, right? And
We did talk about it. The
Yeah.
problem is people outside of Carlisle being able to access it print.
wouldn't you have to submit something? It would have a cross.
We don't have a system where we can.
Okay, so you don't have to.
You would download something, but it could be.
So a non-Carlilian can buy a dump sticker?
No, but we don't have a way to add fake dump sticker to.
No. What I'm saying is, I went online, I bought my dump sticker. It must know I'm a Carlisle resident, right?
Yeah.
How does it know that?
It doesn't. All right, it's a good question.
It's got your UniPay ID.
So we get the
Yeah.
The
Vehicle
registration,
registration
and then we
number.
mail the ticket, or we mail dump sticker, so we verify the.
You verify through the mail.
Yeah. So we could do something like that,
We
where
could
you
do
sign up online and we
Alright,
send you
make that
things.
easy.
We need to look
It's
at.
not gonna be perfect.
Keep it as simple as possible,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And not overburden, but.
The worry is that, if it's known that Carlisle's providing parking, that we get flooded by people who wanna go to Concord, cause we're so close.
Right, sure. Okay, keep
So
going.
so the last thing is starting at 7 o'clock. All this, town citizens and the reenactors march down School Street, basically, and up Bellows Hill, and then, into Estherbrook Woods. So in the past, this road was blocked off, so that we wouldn't mix traffic, obviously, with that big group that's coming. And once they're in the woods, then it's just a matter of shuttling the rest of these people from the parking lot.
And then if some people want to walk one way and ride a bus back, they can do that.
Correct,
right?
yeah. And in the past, and we would do the same here, once the buses are done bringing people to Concord, they would sit at the pickup points in Concord, two of them, and wait for people that need to come back. And when the bus is full, then they would shuttle back.
Right.
It's a massive logistical undertaking for one day or 1.5 days. I
Yeah.
see the fire chief is here, and we have staffing planned for not only the fire but police through this. You want to talk about that?
Well, I think
Or
this,
Brian?
the staffing that the fire department is doing is primarily driven by their coverage of Concord, right? Yeah, so two things.
Come on up.
Come on. We're providing a lot of help for Concord. We have equipment that will help them a lot, and staffing but then the other thing is for us, we're gonna be staffing because all our approaches when in town are gonna be strange, but then getting to the hospitals is gonna be even stranger. So, we're not going through Concord to get to Emerson. And even to go through Bedford to get to Leahy could be problematic. So we're gonna be staffed so that we can get quickly and get rolling, and our ability to get ALS is gonna be challenged, et cetera. So, we're going to, we don't usually have staff sitting at the station, we will have it on that day. And that's regardless of any of this.
Yeah, exactly.
And how is Carlisle, the entrances to Carlisle, how are they going to be? Are they going to be closed?
Yes.
Yeah, and how's that going to be done? Is that the police?
The police, so it'll be blocked off using police and DPW vehicle signage, and you won't be able to get into town unless you're a resident for that short period of time.
Right, right.
Yeah, you'll see the first one up there is about electronic signs. So we'll be able to communicate starting a few weeks before, right up and through the event. So people will know that are coming into town what roads are blocked, so they can pick an alternate route before they get lost in town trying to find their way through the back roads.
Additional patrolling due to people being likely to abandon their cars and try to walk to Carlisle at the last minute. So we need to make sure that all the roads and access points for our emergency vehicles are open and accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So the towns of Bedford, Westford, Chelmsford, like that, what are they doing? Are they?
So Westford doesn't border a major roadway. It doesn't border Concord, right?
Right.
So they have to go through those other towns.
I mean, they're aware that we're blocking off at their border too, right?
I have not communicated to Westford, but I don't think
We
that
will.
they would, the only ones that are coming through Carlisle are the Westford Minutemen, who march down West Street every year. But we have not contacted Westford to let them know.
At the state level, they're talking about the concentric rings that this is going to cause.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but
Lexington has its own set of rings, probably, right?
Lexington and
Yeah.
Concord have their
But
own.
Concord is
centers.
blocking the roads really on the Route 2 perimeter there on that side. So if you're from Westford, you're gonna go down 27 and go down Route 2 to go in anyway, right? So you can get to those parking areas, satellite parking that Concord has,
Okay, so
and then
that's
use
how
their
people-
shuttle buses. Yeah.
you know, Carlisle is the only one that's really is completely blocked along our borders to Concord. Bedford is partially closed, and then they allow them to go down Old Bedford Road to Virginia Road, so they can get partway in, but once you get over towards the base there, you're blocked anyway because of the Battle Road stuff that's gonna be going on.
This is a massive undertaking with federal law enforcement as well involved through the Park Service as well as other agencies. And, you know, in 1975, the president came and spoke at the North Bridge.
Yep.
They have not released who the dignitaries are going to be, to my knowledge, but we are expecting
We're
significant
expecting, of course, a lot of Massachusetts dignitaries. I assume that there'll be some politicians from Washington will definitely be there. The Secret Service has already checked out the bridge a month ago. You know, they obviously have to plan in advance, and of course, I don't think anybody will know until probably 24 hours or less before. And I think they would only inform this. So there's an overarching safety committee for this event that is working with the, you know, Homeland Security and the feds. It's called a super secure event, right? If you've seen anything on this, I mean, they have to plan for all disasters. And they have a pretty good communication scheme where we got retired commander of the BAA for safety and security has helped them with the model that they're following. But yeah, it's a massive undertaking. Ours, fortunately, is a lot simpler, right? Get our town citizens, give them an opportunity to get into Concord to enjoy the festivities and give them a way to get back, including we're going to handle obviously people that are handicapped. We can use, we're thinking the COA van would be their shuttle. Hopefully we don't have too many of them, but we can still shuttle 2 or 3 trips.
And they would have to reserve similarly in advance.
What's that?
I presume they would have to reserve in advance, so you know about that.
I think we're going to do a lot of publicity up front and get some notice well in advance through multiple media outlets, getting people to respond online, in person, et cetera, especially if they're handicapped, to put in essentially a reservation, get your parking credentials, and we'll get an idea of how big we think
So
the
what
crowd is going to be.
happens at Old North Bridge when there's 150,000 people all like filtering in? Like, are they all standing around for some first
They
come,
are,
first
but
serve?
I believe the area only will handle about 25 to 30,000 people that can actually see the bridge.
Yeah.
The rest of them, I think, would find that they couldn't view it and probably would fill the town center and primarily watch the parade in both directions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Concord is not expecting anybody to be able to get through, which is one of the reasons why they had to position assets all the way around. So if they had an emergency, you know,
You
they're
can't
not
go
going
through.
from one side of town to the other. There's somebody in each quadrant who's going to take care of that.
Yeah, that's the emergency stuff. I'm talking about people that all walk down.
I'm
or
just
they-
saying, they're just expecting the whole center to be
full of people.
just full.
And so people who are walking, I guess we get some reservation, but
We
most
do, and
people.
I'll follow up with that on exactly what our responsibilities or, you know, our access is on this. We have been invited by Concord.
We have been.
The select board.
But
has
we
been.
need to tell the townspeople.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Give them a
What's the
realistic
expectation?
expectation.
Yes.
That they're really not gonna be at the bridge, right? They're.
Well, it depends how early you
How
go.
early you get there.
Well, yeah.
You're certainly going to have an advantage when you're on the north side, as we are.
Right, 'cause you're
Most people
closer.
will
Yeah,
come
yeah.
through Concord Center. Matter of fact, the majority of people they're counting on are going to come via the train. So that the train, they're going to put, double up the train
West
service.
Concord Station.
What
So
could
this will
possibly
be-
go wrong?
Yeah. Well, they're.
We need to derail the first train and then.
They have
Yeah,
dedicated,
number problems.
yeah, they have dedicated trains that are wrapped with the 250 logo on them, and they'll pull extra cars on them, and that train's gonna go from Boston to South Acton, back to Boston.
Oh, so-
They're thinking people would get in those 2 ways, and they drop them off in Concord Center, and then they could walk through. So the majority, they're
Coming up
hoping,
through there,
are going to need to come that way. So they're gonna be on
surprised how
the,
long a walk that is. if they
they're gonna
go.
be on the wrong side of the bridge, so
Yeah.
we'll have somewhat of an advantage, you know, for a while.
We have the high ground.
Yeah, we do. Just like the Minuteman did. Yeah.
We do need to kind of wrap this up. So
Yeah.
the monetary impact to Carlisle is, I think, what
Yeah.
we had wanted to talk about. Or
Okay.
members of the select board wanted to.
And I just put that from the mosquito from 75, just as a reference of what was done, where they blocked the roads off, et cetera, if you were interested in that.
Yeah.
And the last slide was just how we calculated the number of parking spaces, et cetera, for these different areas.
Which was Scott on his own time driving around and counting spots, so.
Pre-Sibley or post-Sibley?
Pre-Sibley. If I had Sibley with me, I would have done half the time.
You got your objective.
Yeah. It was interesting because how did it change since in 50 years? You know, how many, because I subtract for driveways, mailboxes, utility poles, any place that was too narrow, where if you had cars parked on both sides, you couldn't get emergency vehicles through, et cetera. And it was pretty close to what they estimated in 75, 800 in the Indian Hill area and 600 over in Knoll Farm.
To help fund this, the safety group had reached out to Simon Cataldo to implore him to support our efforts here and to get some funding. We've sent a letter as well, but there is kind of a cost expectation. We don't know at this point what the funding from the state will be.
Were we smart enough to
Brian.
reserve for that last year in budget cycle?
No, so the state has approved funding on the House side, not the Senate side. So we did reach out to our delegation and say, and there's an anticipation that they are going to release this funding. We said that we should claim a small amount. If you add police and fire, the overtime costs, any DPW workers we use for managing traffic, and then buses, porta potties, just basic services, somewhere between 20 and 30,000 is probably the cost.
Yeah.
Wow.
How much are we asking from the state?
20 or 30,000. The impact being, the town is bearing the brunt of the closures for this. So
How is Concord funding it? They're gonna have hundreds of thousands.
They got business.
a lot of fundraising and a significant chunk of that. The number I heard, and it's late, so please don't hold me to it, but it's 750,000 was reserved in the state budget for.
And then they're gonna give us a little bit.
Yeah, and they needed
Lexington,
1.2 million. And they're
Concord
definitely,
does?
Town of Concord. They estimated they need 1.2 million for all of the security and all of the infrastructure.
The Army's also chosen to celebrate their birthday during this event, and which is adding to the complexity of tanks and et cetera. And high-level dignitaries expected, so.
Yeah, I mean, they invited the royal family also, so I mean.
Thanks to Concord, that'd be cool.
So the parade is going to include
Just
military
repeat it off the
vehicles, is
roads.
that what you're saying? And maybe soldiers marching in formation or something?
Yeah, and the events, so the events stretch from, well, the
The
closure
event
starts
being the
Friday.
parade.
It's not just the parade, it's an all-day to include a drone light show at 7 p.m. in
Oh,
Concord.
that's, I see.
So we're not planning on supporting that with this plan, but
Yeah.
you should know
Yeah.
that there will be
Yeah.
impacts on Carlisle as
Yeah.
people travel through.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you. Well,
And somebody will give us our marching orders, right? I mean,
Yep, I'm
marching-
working on
Okay. Making me anxious.
Yeah, in 75. Yeah.
I'll ride a horse. I'd be happy to ride a horse. Yeah, I'd be happy to
Yeah,
drive
in
a
75,
cart.
every department turned out for 36 to 40 hours straight to support that event. It was all hands on deck.
Every department, meaning the
Meaning
staff, all the town staff.
Yeah.
Wait,
DPW,
75.
fire, police, select board, et cetera, who were invited to the Patriot Ball in Concord, but just declined to go because there was too much going on in town. I mean, they had 100 National Guard stationed here. Barbara Culkins at 4 a.m. is feeding them all breakfast at the Spalding Building. I mean, everybody turned out to do, whatever needed to be done.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not going to Rockport that weekend.
dress warmly, don't drink too much coffee.
Expect breakfast.
Yeah.
I've certainly
bring
told
your
people that,
bag.
this is not the year to go enjoy the events at the bridge and the parade and the battle reenactments, because it would be very difficult to see with all those people.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing that people have in common that went to the bicentennial, is that they all had that experience of that
Yeah.
and the little bits and pieces, and they were all glad that they went in the end, no matter how little they saw or how much
Yeah.
they participated, yeah. Yeah, I was on Lexington Green, 3:45 a.m. We were about 60 feet from the front line.
Oof. Oh.
A bunch of Boy Scouts. And I
So
still
you,
have my
what, you
stamps, the
you
first day
walked
issued.
with your headlamp?
Yeah, we camped in someone's front yard. The Boy Scouts.
Yeah, I was in college, but I came out for it and walked through. I grew up in the end of Boulder Road, so I just parked there and then walked
Yeah.
Two Rod Road
Right.
down to the bridge. But
Right.
So did you go to the bridge? Were you at the bridge?
Oh, yes, yeah, absolutely.
And what did they do then, that year?
Well, I mean, it's just, the protesters were all there on a soggy, rainy morning, but they were pretty much in the background. So the rest was, the parade and then the
Did the
ceremonies.
parade march over the bridge?
April 19th
I didn't
is
as a
always
spectator.
soggy, rainy, or sleety,
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
I'm-
yeah.
my kids were in the 4-H.
This year I had VIP
German, so
tickets, so I will be marching in the parade, so I don't have to worry
But
about
does the
it.
parade go over the bridge?
Yes, it does,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, and there is a
Is
surprise.
there a
I mean,
shot
peop-
heard around the world?
Yes, and despite what Lexington says, the shot heard around the world was in Concord. And
Yeah.
there is one surprise that most people don't know yet, but my regiment has organized a flyover at 10:15. So there's a BK 136 and fighter jets coming over, low over the bridge at 10:15.
Whoa.
So that'll make a nice
Now
impression.
you've just gone public.
Yeah,
I want you to
exactly.
know.
Yeah.
There'll be a mosquito.
Yeah. There's a lot that'll be in the mosquito.
Yeah.
Some low-flying aircraft.
Scott, is the food provisioning for Concord must be also just astonishing.
They're finding that almost in every aspect, they are falling short. I mean,
100,000 people are going to be pretty hungry after the parade.
well, and you
right?
assume that you're going to have something like 10,000 to 20,000 probably for the dawn salute, because people will say, well, why not go early for dawn salute, and then you're already there for the parade. So you're going to have an hour and a
These
half
people-
of idle time, 2 hours of idle time. What are you going to be doing? Well, you're going to be looking for coffee and other things. And I know it's quite limited, the food vendors who they've been working with that will come in and help support them. But, they still have to worry about all the security aspects, and they're putting, large vehicles at all of the security points, so no traffic can get in. And so they've got logistics that just aren't going to allow them
There's a
to.
lot of infrastructure issues for them. So even like, try using your cell phone in Concord. Can you imagine 150,000 people and all that? So cell on wheels setups, and there's a lot of infrastructure, and it's still not gonna.
They're gonna put, I heard they were gonna put temporary, so.
Yeah,
cows.
yeah, the cows. Yeah, I think they have 4 or 5 of them that are going in there.
Debbie,
yeah.
you have a question?
Yes, I did actually. Scott, do you know if there, like when you go to outdoor concerts, like they say you have to only take transparent bags through because of security, and they actually are checking your bags now? Are they going to be up to that level of security, do you think?
For like the parade, et cetera?
Well, just to even get into Concord?
No, there won't be that kind of security.
I was just wondering, because that's what it is now. They're very, very tight.
Depends on who shows up.
Yeah.
Well, I think even if they show up, I'm a Minuteman, right? And we talked with the head of the national park there, with the security, et cetera, and I said, any restrictions on firearms and that kind of stuff? He says, not that I know of. So I think there's only so much that you can do, because it's just too open, there's too many access points, so it's not really feasible to do it, especially given how many people are gonna try to come through in a short period of time. So.
But I'm just worried about 100,000 people who are tired, irritable, hungry, have to pee
Just thinking about
at,
Yes.
9 o'clock.
stand in a
Yeah.
completely enclosed glass
It's not gonna be
cage.
fun. That part's not gonna
No, that's not, that's gonna be difficult.
So the
but-
dispersal is also a big thing, right?
Yeah, and they've,
Managing the
in
dispersal.
the past, it was over after the parade, right?
Right.
People went to
Right.
Lexington for that parade. There was no Battle Road back then, et cetera. So now they've really created a problem, that they have a block party in the center of Concord to essentially keep people there from 2 to 6 until the drone show goes off, so.
Okay.
We have other
Yeah.
items
Thank
on
you.
our
Thank
agenda,
you,
but
guys.
thank you for
Okay.
coming and giving us an update.
Anyway, I'm sure there'll be more questions. I'll be happy to come back at a later date to
to answer those questions or
Thank you for
update
these.
you.
Yeah.
Very thoughtful.
Just thank you for all your work, and, I mean, maybe I'm a Pollyanna, but I think if the call went out here in town for people to help, you get a good response.
Really help, yeah.
I
in our
know, I
community.
mean, I've been in this town long enough, I know I can rally 30 people if I need to.
Yeah.
Right? There's
Yeah.
enough good people in this town, and they really do respond to that kind of thing. So,
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Great, thank you.
And one other item, don't forget to mention to come to the flag ceremony.
Oh, that's right, on Saturday.
Yes, yes,
While you're
yes,
here.
yes, yeah. Well, while I'm here, yes. So one of the events that we planned is the ceremony for the replica flag, which is finally done after 4 or 5 years. And see, Alan Lewis is on there, and he's coming to that presentation on Saturday, representing Barbara, who started that replica
Yes.
flag.
Right.
So it's 2 to 3 right here. I've got Minutemen from 1975 who are going to carry the original flag that I have, as well as our other Bunker Hill flag. And then I've got people from the modern day Minutemen that'll also be there. And then the woman who sewed the original flag, Beverly Heath, and her son Eric will be here. So got
Nice.
the old and the new, and it'll be a nice ceremony with a little fife and drum music, etc.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you to everyone who came.
Bye.
All right, moving along. We wanted to close the town warrant if we so decide, but you want to go through anything on that?
We can go over the current warrant if you want, but the main action tonight is to close it.
Okay.
No more submissions as of right now.
But how many submissions do you have, are you up to?
Might be
Briefly,
helpful, yeah, take a.
I think, do we have a list you could put up, or?
I do.
That'd be great, thank you.
There will be a temptation to have a lot of questions about each.
No, no, I
Yes.
just want to see the volume up.
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, so the first items here in the violet color on the left are the consent agenda items that you're familiar with.
Yep.
Then we move into operating budget, capital plan, the additional fire truck borrow. Anything in yellow is something that might be removed because it's not needed.
Yep.
The MFC to include 2 of their projects that would require borrowing as of now, the elevator project and the library coils project. The amenities building is being proposed as both a CPA request and a non-CPA request, or maybe no request, which is why it's in yellow. The TA bylaw, everything here, the next 9 are CPC articles. So the regular appropriations, the cemetery improvements you heard about tonight, and the registry application, the amenities building, the Highland building, rental assistance, Dimmitt Park, Bantha Davis rehabilitation, Spalding baseball field rehabilitation, and Heald House and barn rehabilitation. And then 2 operational articles, the HISCOM's demo delay bylaw and historical delay bylaw, which they're considering. CONSCOM's placeholder for the wetland bylaw. The stuff the treasurer talked to you about, so tailings and demand fees are candidates for the consent agenda, I'm hearing.
Yep.
The Davis Land CR, which we talked about. The 2 planning bylaws related to ADUs and accessory apartments. The request for planning assistance for MBTA communities. The fire station design, which you've discussed before. We're definitely not going to need more money for the police station, but it's there just in case. The Board of Health's mosquito monitoring. The name change for the celebrations committee, which is just a housekeeping item. The veteran director has asked the town to consider the HERO Act tax abatement, which you'll get more information from the assessor on it. It's basically an increase to existing abatements for veterans. Did the housing advocate make the list? That didn't, right?
No,
Okay, so that'll come out.
come off, yeah.
The solicitor bylaw from the police, I talked about demand fees, but also the prudent investment law change. And this is cemetery improvements in case the CPC does not approve it. It would be asked as a free cash request, assuming the select board wanted to support it. So approximately 41 to 45 articles.
And there's that new one that came in.
And there is a citizen's petition for the planning board to consider more than one option with the MBTA bylaw discussion in the fall.
So speaking of that, I saw something from you at some point, and I don't remember where I saw it, suggesting that perhaps the fall town meeting would be the bylaw meeting, and just shove all those bylaws down the road.
It's in order to facilitate the meeting. I was saying if bylaws weren't ready, or it's not likely that they'll be for the spring, to tell those boards and committees that the fall would be a good place to discuss big bylaw changes.
Well, it's clear that they're, the MBTA, not the extra funding for the consultant, but the actual bylaw will be a fall thing. That's what they were aiming
Right.
for. But the accessory apartments,
I think we'll be ready.
well, they may be ready. I'm just saying, I mean, it's not for me to say, but I just feel, and I've made this point to our committee, that we're going to go to this afternoon thing, right? So at, noonish, we're going to have hopefully a food truck and open house and maybe poster session start at 1 o'clock Sunday, right? 4 o'clock, like, people are going to leave. They're just going to go. I mean, there's not much we can do. This is not a 3-hour meeting, what I'm seeing right there. So I don't know. It has really not, we should close the warrant, definitely. But we have to start thinking about, like, nobody wants a 2-day meeting. I certainly don't want a 2-day meeting.
Right, so
We
you're
have the luxury
supportive
of
of the
time,
fall
but it might
town
be
meeting.
like 18 people in the
Yeah.
room when we do it, that's all. That's just the reality.
So you're supportive of a fall town meeting and moving
Oh, I'm
it
definitely
to
supportive
this?
of a fall town meeting.
Yeah.
I'm supportive of being more aggressive in telling
Moving.
some
Yeah.
bills, even if they're ready, it's too complicated.
Yeah.
We need to move it, that's all. We are, as mentioned, one more thing is, the purple, those consent, our opinion is we want to when I say our, the task force, interested in expanding the use of the consent agenda. And let people raise their hand and say, I want to pull it out.
Yeah.
So the planning board, through the town planner, has also asked the select board to set a fall town meeting date as soon as possible, if not
Right, so that they
this
know.
meeting, your next
Yeah,
meeting.
I agree. I think
To
that's smart.
facilitate that conversation, saying there is one and here's the date.
Yeah.
Do we have any dates that have been
We probably have to
contemplated?
check with the
She
school,
sent a
right?
memo today that I'll circulate to everyone. I haven't read it yet. I didn't get to it today, but I do know that that recommendation is in
But your
there.
window isn't very large, right? Because we've had this conversation before. If you go to, September, people come back from school, they're getting set, you're not gonna do September. You got some part of October, most of the second half of October, and then you don't really want to bump into, it's like the first week maybe of November. Like, you really only have
What day did we
about a
set?
4-week window.
When we thought we were going to do one last fall.
It was like, October 18th or something.
And David, is the task force thinking that the Sunday is only the Springtown meeting?
We haven't gotten that far in our thought, and maybe, so it's a good question. I guess we should ask that.
That would obviously
It
determine
becomes
the
more
date
problematical in the
setting.
fall because of sports,
I know.
so I don't know, I
Yeah.
haven't, honestly.
In October, you also have to worry about, Columbus Day, which is on a Monday.
Oh, I know.
Right, yeah, you bump into a whole bunch of
Whatever.
things. So, right, you're right, Columbus Day is the, well, we don't call it that anymore, do we?
No, it's Indigenous People Day.
Although my little Google Calendar thinks.
Got 2 Columbus and 1 Indigenous.
IPD.
I think you're looking at October 20, October 27, November 3.
If it were a Sunday.
What's election day, the 4th, yeah.
Brian, did you?
The planning board in this memo, it suggested November 9th, 10th, 16th, or 17th as aligning with their,
November 9th is a Sunday. Oh, okay.
they added Sundays in case that was a continuation.
So 9, 10, what are the other two?
17?
16, 17.
And 11 is.
11th is Veterans Day.
10 might not be bad, because maybe some people are off on Veterans Day, which would make a late night more palatable.
Well, or
I'll
people
send this
might-
memo, I don't want to just reference it, but
Okay, we need
they
to
are
think, we
strongly
should think about it
suggesting
for next
Sundays as
meeting.
well.
So we have to determine
You're
when the
suggesting
school's
what?
available, yeah.
You're suggesting
The
Sunday?
planning board is suggesting a Sunday, and on those dates, they offered the Monday because it's your choice, obviously.
Yeah.
But this is
Not a bad
to
idea.
accommodate their scheduling of hearings and the
Yeah.
public outreach that's going to be required for both
Right, so they
MBTA.
need more time rather than less time, is what they're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And the set date helps them
Right.
solidify their plan.
yeah.
Special town meeting, like?
A very special town meting.
No,
Well, that's what it always gets called, right? It's
Is it a special still?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that part doesn't matter. I guess, unfortunately, won't be around this week for my usual bi-weekly meeting, but I'll ask the people to start thinking about it. Again, just brainstorming, I would say, if we're gonna start the routine of Sunday, then maybe we should
Stick with Sunday.
stick with Sunday. See.
It's also, that time of year is also sports
Well, I know.
playoffs and all that stuff.
what we were saying.
So usually, I think Sunday is a clear day in terms of,
Sundays are generally clearer than Saturdays, unless they're.
and
NFL.
during the week, because that's when you get into the MIA playoff brackets. So like at the high school level, you don't know what your schedule looks like or what
But
days.
it's not usually Sunday?
Not usually Sundays.
Yeah.
But then you also,
could be Monday.
November, that you can't count on the weather, so if you really, I don't know how you do the kid babysitting piece, but we
You
could
couldn't,
see.
you probably
Have to
wouldn't.
use the
gym.
cafeteria or the
Cafeteria, the
gym.
Gym in the
Yeah.
cafeteria.
Yeah,
Get the Friday Night Live people involved.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you could do, it's just,
Yeah.
I mean,
but
good to know.
Okay,
All right, so should we move to close the warrant?
yes,
Yes.
I need a motion, please.
I move to close the warrant.
Second.
Scheduled for May 18th, 2025.
For the May 18th spring town meeting, 2025 annual town meeting.
Carlisle.
Oh, move to close the warrant for the annual town meeting scheduled from Sunday, May 18th, 2025.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, Barney got
Boy.
beat you to it. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it passes. We are closed. No more.
All right, that's it, no mas.
It's a lot. It's gonna be fun.
All right, Mr. Town Administrator.
This is my town administrator's report to the select board. There is an all chairs meeting that is scheduled for March 7th. The agenda includes talking about employee reviews, budget updates, preparation for the town meeting, and committee reports, which is my favorite part, learning from all the committees. I've scheduled another coffee hour at Fern's on March 11th. I had a couple great guests at my last one. It seems I'm getting regular attendance at these, so it's definitely worth the time. So come talk to me about the town meeting or anything else of interest to the town. You heard Scott Evans tonight talk about the town flag ceremony that's
Can I
happening.
interrupt you?
Of course.
Just to make sure. So is the all chairs meeting an open meeting?
It is my meeting of all the chairs in town to discuss
But
town
is it-
events. yeah.
Like, if someone like me, for example, who's not a chair or a vice chair.
You're chair.
wanna-
chair of the study committee.
Oh, then I'm there, okay. If somebody else wanted to sit in, they can or not?
Yes.
Or is it only invitation?
People can
It's
sit
an op-
in.
Okay,
No, it's not a,
okay,
Just need to consider quorums.
okay, all right. No, it wouldn't be that, it would be listening, okay.
well, wait a minute, so if you consider quorums,
You're
No,
gonna,
only if you're deliberating, you can sit and listen.
Because she's the
well,
chair.
well, that's what
and you're
happened
a chair.
remember the last time?
No, but we.
I was ousted,
You
because
could
there were
only,
3 of the 5 select board, but
But-
if I come as the chair of the CPC, he comes as the chair
but
of
if you only talk about CPC stuff and I only talk about town meeting stuff,
Well, our TA is shaking his head.
But you can just post your meeting. That's fine.
okay. We post a select board meeting.
Post your meeting during mine.
Okay, let's do that, let's do that.
can you,
Could you take care of that?
yes.
So I gotta note that, what time is the meeting?
I'm not
It's at 10 a.m. on March 11th.
Going.
no.
Said March
I
7th.
showed up February 7th, thinking it was.
I saw this, I see the 7th.
That was a month ahead.
Sorry. March
Where is
7th.
everybody?
The coffee hour is on the 11th. March 7th.
Seventh.
7th.
March 7th, got it.
Oh, my gosh.
All right, I'm putting it down right now.
Where is everyone?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
texted
Edit
everyone.
the
I'm like,
podcast.
What was it all? what-
On Saturday,
And I got
Oh,
on
okay,
Zoom. and
okay, yeah,
I
yeah.
will be here with some of you, I believe, to dedicate the town flag. The
Yes.
follow-up to that dedication will be bringing it down to the State House for flying there. So Carlisle will join the towns that have flags flying in the Hall of Flags.
But that's not happening in the same day.
No.
It's not.
Yeah.
You said 10 a.m., right?
Yes. Thank you. 10 a.m. The Concord Museum has requested permission to host their Paul Revere's bike ride for the Concord Museum, timing on the 250th, which we talked about a lot tonight. Up to 500 cyclists will be going through our town and many of those around us. It's a big loop, seems like fun. The group is looking for your approval. Both chiefs have recommended this event. As long as there's no road closures, they have no issues. Then there are no road closures.
It's a month.
What was the date of it?
May 17th.
Okay.
May 17th. So if
Can we move that
Do you
now?
need a,
if you want to move that, you can move that now.
We gotta go back up to the motion now, right? So at the beginning, it says, sorry.
Move to approve the use of town roads as described in the town administrator's report for the Concord Museum charity bike ride on May 17th, 2025.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. None opposed.
For your human resources update from our assistant town administrator, we have extended offers for our last DPW driver laborer position and the public safety administrative role, and the only open role or position now is the DPW mechanic. As you know, Carol Grunike has resigned as the COHS director. Aubrey's serving as the interim COHS director, and we are putting together a committee to discuss the job description and duties of the next COHS director. For your budget update, the Finance Committee has asked police, fire, DPW, library, town hall, and both schools to conduct a 2% budget cut exercise, and they'll be discussing that on Thursday. I will be at the meeting with them. They're also going to be reviewing revenue side of the budget to make recommendations on the so-called deficit. Governor Healy's House 1 budget and health insurance cost projections have not significantly changed the budget outlook after an analysis, and we are $800,000 over the 3% tax increase mark at this point. I'm continuing to recommend prioritizing capital in the budget. We'll be going over this with the Finance Committee and sending you their discussion points for that so you can prepare and let me know if there's any departments that you want to come in to talk about capital for your eventual.
Can I interrupt you again? So the 800K deficit and the 3% assumes zero use of free cash or some use of free cash?
Assumes zero.
Zero. So there is some free cash available for one purpose or the other.
And revenue, some revenue adjustments as well.
Right. But the 800K is the operating budget deficit.
Operating.
No capital.
Yeah.
No capital use.
Correct. Okay. Tonight you had a presentation from the Cultural Council.
That won't close the gap.
I'm just hoping the schools kind of got our message.
They didn't get your
They
message.
need to look at their budget.
I don't know. Barney tossed them a softball and they whiffed on the softball as far as I'm concerned.
Not acceptable not to
Oh, good.
to do the exercise.
I sent you information from the town clerk regarding the 2025 annual town election, which is scheduled for June 3rd, and the town caucus is scheduled for March 31st. You can see the memo for information from Ashley about that. We talked about the fall town meeting date and setting those dates as recommended by the planning board and other boards. My report also includes some final information about the Wilkins HVAC replacement, to include our acceptance of $117,000 from National Grid for a rebate. Thanks to the facility staff mostly, and although Sarah says she doesn't deserve any credit, I do think she works hard on these rebates. Also, at the energy use in the Wilkins building will decrease by the equivalent of 3 households each year based on this new equipment, which is pretty interesting. For capital project updates, we're going to talk about this comprehensive culvert analysis as soon as we get through this budget cycle, so probably in April, but you will be getting this report and it'll inform our long-term capital plan. The elevator maintenance project is almost ready for bidding, so that is timing to have a correct number for town meeting, which is going to be one of the warrant articles we discussed tonight. The Benfield project is complete. The only thing left is the exterior door project is complete. The only thing left is to issue out the fobs for the residents, and we're working with NOAA to complete that action. Also, you should follow the brick building HVAC discussion. So there's a discussion about the costs here and the benefits of sustainability and not, and whether or not we can use Green Communities Grant. The MSC's done a great job working through this project and trying to find funding for it. So I'll have a final report for you soon on what's decided there. For building construction project updates, I did finalize negotiation over the contract with Silver Swartz, who's the designer for the library renovation project. They will now work with the OPM CMS in order to move this project forward. The first step will be schematic design, and then construction documents, and then bidding, as you're now becoming very familiar with. The police station renovation will go out on the street for bid tomorrow. We've already sent it to many interested applicants and construction firms. The dates are St. Patrick's Day for those final numbers, so we'll know that number as well. And then fire station renovation, the designer you selected, Tecton, and your OPM have agreed to keep their funds for the up to town meeting part of the study within your ARPA allocation. So we have the funding to complete that initial stage of the design project to bring to town meeting. So there's a little bit of a concession from them. They're taking a hit in the beginning, the understanding that if the project's approved,
You've negotiated an agreement with Tecton.
we have to sign it, but we have agreement from both that they're moving forward, and they're having their first meeting about it this week, so they're in. And then the analysis of the DPW building is ongoing with the MFC, a little delayed in their presentation to you. Not that you don't have enough to do, but in the next month or so, they'll be coming to talk to you about that project. Some discussion points that you should keep on your radar: appointing a new community garden manager, or at least assisting the CONSCOM with that. The Board of Assessor vacancy, which will be very similar to the school committee vacancy, just a couple-month appointment, but there are multiple candidates, I believe 3 at this point, for you to consider. The TSAC wants to come in and talk about the transfer station, to include raising sticker fees and potentially expanding the transfer station in the next few years. And then the Bog House, the town planner wants to come in and update you on the affordable housing feasibility investigation at the Bog House. Only one notification that I did on your behalf that I'm informing you about: the Carlisle's 250th Colonial Fair is going to have a sign in the Rotary in the Town Common, and that is the event that Scott Evans was talking to you about tonight. For staff recognitions, I went on a tour, a Meal on Wheels shift with our new transportation coordinator, Jennifer Gagne. It's just incredible to see the staff, how they interact with our senior population. Jennifer doesn't always go, it's usually a volunteer, but the volunteers were able to relay to me that they knew I was coming, that they knew the volunteer schedule, who was gonna be there. So it's not just delivering meals, it's also interacting with the public. Our COHS does that in every event that they have. In every program they run, it's very evident to me that they know a lot about the Carlisle seniors and residents, not just in a professional way, but also in a personal way. So I was able to witness that. I was grilled on a few things at each one of the stops, and can't wait to do it again. I thought delivering the meals was fun, and getting out into the community and seeing them, and I'm encouraging other staff members to do it as well.
What were you grilled on?
Senior Center came up in one of them. Also, taxes and other buildings, and just what our plans were for continuing programs like this. And then a few people gave me their recollections of the town, and I admired the view that some people have of the wildlife and the trees here in Carlisle. I was just reminded that, you know, it's a very, very beautiful community.
It's important to know, because I did this one year as well, that meals on, you don't just, fling the food. It's also a visit and a social thing. Yeah. Because I know in some towns, I have a neighbor in Rockport. They hang a bag on the door, on her door.
What does that mean?
It means they don't. It's just a Meals on Wheels.
Oh, it's Meals
Other towns, it's not necessarily a
Right.
Is Gagny the
person
spouse of
visit
Gagny
or
lives
whatever.
there?
Yes.
And they live in town?
Being visit.
They don't.
Yeah.
Okay, no, they both work here. Okay.
All right, the report includes some dates of interest coming up for you, and then on the board here, or on the screen, is the tentative agenda upcoming, which includes a joint meeting with TSAC, a lot of annual meeting talk, the discussion about the Bog House with the town planner, and continued discussion of the 250th. As you can see, as I met with the town manager in Concord today, the 250th is taking up a lot of oxygen as we move into April in the area. Not as much for us, but it's definitely a significant event that we're going to have to plan for, as you know.
And I would be helpful as the chair of the CPC to know, of those 9 CPC applications that are now on the warrant, which of those the select board would like to have a more detailed conversation about. I mean, not, and maybe you don't feel the need to have that for any of them, but we're certainly prepared to make that happen if desired.
It's getting to the point where if there isn't an additional meeting, one of these meetings should be, for lack of a better phrase, a speed dating about these particular issues that you can work through with the petitioners so that you can feel comfortable.
So we're going to meet tomorrow morning, right?
About the town meeting?
Yeah, so I think that's what you're talking about, right, is evaluating the articles, like getting more information about the specific articles?
Yeah, but if as a select board, I can't remember who said this a meeting or so ago, that they hadn't heard about, much about the amenities building or the Highlands.
So what we're a little late. We're going around to all the boards and committees.
Yeah.
And I can circulate, but we're going to meet tomorrow on it, so I want to get a little more guidance from Ryan's team. But we've got a one-page thing, which like you would get as a CPC, and basically it's going to say, you need like an elevator, like 2 to 4 sentences elevator speech, and we recommend you'd have like a pro and con, and be honest, right? These are the reasons to like the mass ballot style. These are the reasons that it's a good thing, and these are arguments against it. And we are proposing that if you can get that in front of the select board by the March meeting, like that's a good thing for us to have. It's a PRP they need anyway.
Right.
But if they can get some piece of that to us a month from now, like that's the kind of thing I think would help us.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
evaluate that. So we're kind of going through that right now.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, that's my report.
Thank you. We have next warrants and minutes. I don't know if anyone had a chance to go through them.
Yeah.
Everyone?
Fine to me.
If you want to make a motion then, or if there are any edits.
I got to get the dates here. I move to approve the minutes of the select board meetings of January 21st and 28th, 2025.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Yeah, sorry, was it
Scott.
the one on the 28th that she said was AI generated primarily?
Looked
You might
okay to
wanna
me. Did it
Do
hallucinate?
one at a time.
You want to take one at a time in case there's...
Well, did anybody have any comments on that
They looked
second
o-
one?
They looked okay to me. There was no proofreading of the AI?
Oh, no.
What
we
Gretchen
was just
said-
experimenting with the AI. of
Yeah,
course.
Gretchen said in her
As long as
note,
there's proofing. yeah.
It serves as the base.
yeah.
It probably does 40 to 60% of the work, and then you have to do the rest.
Okay, all right.
It's getting better. It's getting
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I want to compliment, whether it was AI or Gretchen, I think she said a tepid, a tepid recommend.
Tepidly favorable.
Yeah, tepidly favorable, I like that. That's great.
All right, so I heard a second. Any, for both, any adjustments, any comments? Seeing none, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, none opposed.
I'm sorry, I had one more update. I believe I'd sent it to you, and if I didn't, I will. So Bethany resigned and moved on. She was the conservation assistant. And as we know, Sylvia's out right now, so John is covering as the interim. In order to support the CONSCOM temporarily, after conversation with the chair of both the CONSCOM and the planning board, having Noel serve as the assistant for the CONSCOM and continue her planning assistant role. Also supporting her with some minute support and other things that could be more permanent. So this would be combining the planning and the CONSCOM assistant under the town planner and the conservation director or agent. It does cut down at half an FTE, but it also expands that position and makes it stronger and more attractive, allows us to retain someone like Noel for longer by adding some responsibility. And if you supplemented that with some consulting funds and or minutes funds, right, money to do the administrative work, then we do believe it would work, even though we're taking 3 employees and making them 2. So I've communicated this to the planning board and I've communicated it to the Conservation Commission. I will be going to each board and presenting this as a final solution or as a more permanent solution, seeking their approval. And if they both approve it, then this would become part of the budget. So this is more combining of positions on the land use side and trying to turn those assistants into coordinators, hopefully eventually working with something like AI in order to help with minutes production and allow us to be more efficient with staff. Just wanted to let the board and public know that that's going on, and I communicated it with the boards that are involved in the approvals, and we have a tentative agreement to discuss it further after.
And I assume Noel is interested.
We did ask her, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
She has a conservation background, she's more than qualified, and the way we're structuring the job, I think it would be a benefit to her.
Yeah.
We'll lose her fast because she's very talented, but while she's here, we'll take advantage of her skills.
Okay. Thank you. Good.
Okay. So we've approved the minutes, appointments.
is it the Board of Assessors? Do we take, or,
There's 2 candidates, right?
there's 3.
3 candidates.
Do we not do a joint meeting?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Can we do this on our own?
That's a typo. So you will be doing that at your next meeting.
Next
with the
meeting.
Our
board.
Yeah,
next
okay.
meeting, okay, so that wasn't supposed to be in this
No,
packet.
it wasn't,
Okay,
sorry.
okay.
Okay, that's why it says Z and
Oh,
not.
so the candidates are in there so you can have a preview. That's why they're in there,
Aha,
not to
okay.
vote.
Okay.
So we didn't have any,
Well, it's not for us right now.
not for now.
Yeah. We just
Okay.
wanted to get you ahead
Great.
because
All right, yep. My bad on that. Liaison reports,
I met with the library trustees last night. They reviewed the TA bylaw. They voted to support it, but they would like to be excised from it.
we heard that tonight.
Yeah, they support it if they're not included, is what you're saying.
Yeah, if they're not included. They did, though, they wrote a little statement before, they'll be sending it
Okay.
later, but, and in that statement, they said that they really do appreciate the HR support from the town hall. They've called on them, on it for their evaluation of the librarian, and that they plan, in fact, and then they gave some suggested edits for the
Right.
draft bylaw, and one of it was that they they shall conform or comply to the town personnel policy handbook,
Right.
which I thought was actually a very positive statement, because although they're affirming that, although they want to still keep control of their hiring and firing, that they will conform with all personnel policy in the town, so that they're not,
They're not saying they wouldn't.
that's right.
Okay. So I met yesterday, I think it was, what's today, Tuesday? Yeah, yesterday with the planning board. I would say similar reaction. What?
It was a long meeting.
Well, the rest of it was a long meeting, but I was up front. The TA bylaw part was up front. Were you listening in on that meeting? Yeah, so you heard it. So I would say they were sort of in the middle between Board of Health and library in terms of the reaction. About half of them support the article, and the other half have that Board of Health view that this is a slippery slope, that's a bad thing. However, I think they also gave editorial suggestions, some of which I think are pretty good. And so my ask, Chairman Snell, is I don't know whether we want to do it like in open meeting or not an open meeting, maybe not an open meeting, but meet with council. I think the language is clumsy, I have to say. It's not helping us. There are certain things, I don't want to get into it at 10:15, but I could see from what they were saying, suggestions they made, suggestions I see, that better wordsmithing would help our work product, and I think we have time to do it. So my ask is that we sit with council. I'd like to be part of that process, but it's up to you. But,
Great.
you want to...
We're trying to get this because we think, at least I think, but I think
Yeah.
the board thinks this is a worthwhile endeavor. So we want to get it right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's.
Right. I think in the broad sense, if we can be more prescriptive, it's a little broad in the way it's written, and maybe that's delivered by council, but if we can be more prescriptive, especially around this thing that we've all said, which is you boards have policy, and you need to work on policy, and we, the select board, are not, we have to be more definitive, declarative. We are not trying to take your policy role. Now,
Right.
policy is yours. It flows to these people in some fashion, and the administration, the support, the HR, the word that Addie used is operational instead of day-to-day, right? The operational side, there are things like that that I think would go to, we're never going to convince Board of Health, it doesn't matter. But the boards that are reasonable but are saying, wait a minute, I think that's the avenue we need to explore, and I think we should explore it.
Yeah, I think that was partly what the library, they said, well, it wasn't clear to us.
It's not clear. It's not written clearly, I have to say.
I said, well, it seemed clear to us, but I'm, okay.
Well, I've been through it 3 times now, and the very mild criticism that Brian offered, he was very mild, right? Brian's a smart guy. Brian Watterson. He's just like, I'm only talking for me, it's not
Yes.
schools, but it's a slippery slope, and I'm not seeing that it's not a slippery slope. I mean, that's kind of,
Right.
and so again, if we're really clear, we're a little bit too inside. Like, they're reading it and saying like, police, why is police, they
Yes.
don't know, strong chief, weak chief, I mean, that's a lot of inside baseball.
Right.
We should be like very clear on what we're trying to do, so that's my recommendation.
I will call you.
Absolutely. All right.
If you could get any kind of feedback, though, from, you said the library or whatever, in writing or just
It's in
anything?
writing. It's
Okay.
already in writing. I
Any,
thought they were going to send it to Ryan. I thought it would, they haven't sent it to
It's
you.
really the chair. You should really send it to me. Ryan's
just send
trying
it to you.
He's
Because
trying
it's
to,
a,
he's trying
That's
to,
true.
not
I
be
will just
involved
forward
in
it to you immediately.
Okay, super.
I mean, the other thing that comes up is people think this means that we're going to have a town manager. Right? They don't understand the difference.
If they even know that much. I think they just say, is there a land grab by the select board? Like you're taking, they're not saying him, they're saying you guys are taking over a piece that is supposed to be separately elected. I mean, I think we can navigate that. There's there's a board that says
Right,
over by
doesn't
dead body.
matter,
But
right.
other ones aren't saying that. They're just
Yeah.
saying, I have one more, just very brief liaison report. So I was pleased to sit as part of the audit, I don't know, you can't call it a committee, right? But
No, it's our
the audit working group to listen to the audit of the 2024 audit review. And I won't go into the details because they will be presenting, but very clean bill of health.
Good.
No
Good.
management concerns. We're very strong financially at the moment. So, it was informative. I thought they did a nice job at explaining things, and we've done well. Now comes the challenge.
Yeah.
All right. If there's nothing else, I will open it up to community input at the end of our meeting. Is there anyone online who would like to make a comment from the public? All right. Well, thanks, Mark, for staying to the bitter end.
Mark, you're very tough.
Alan is there,
Christina,
Christina,
Yeah.
the regulars.
Yeah. All right. Well, seeing no comments, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're done.
All right, awesome.